Pour sa 5e édition, la fête internationale de la science 2025 propose de réfléchir à un défi majeur. Nourrir 10 milliards d'habitants en 2050 tout en respectant les limites planétaires. Pour sa 5e édition, la fête internationale de la science 2025 propose de réfléchir à un défi majeur. Nourrir 10 milliards d'habitants en 2050 tout en respectant les limites planétaires. Rejoignez-nous pour une exploration des enjeux. Rejoignez-nous pour une exploration des solutions. Les modalités de transformation des systèmes alimentaires. À la croisée de la science, de l'innovation et des objectifs du développement durable. Pour sa 5e édition, la fête internationale de la science 2025 propose de réfléchir à un défi majeur. Nourrir 10 milliards d'habitants en 2050 tout en respectant les limites planétaires. Rejoignez-nous pour une exploration des enjeux, solutions et modalités de transformation des systèmes alimentaires. À la croisée de la science, de l'innovation et des objectifs de développement durable. Solutions et modalités de transformation des systèmes alimentaires. À la croisée de la science, de l'innovation et des objectifs du développement durable.
Ah, c'est bon. Okay. Bonjour à tous.
Hello everyone,
Notamment à Dakar,
and hello Dakar, Addis Abeba and Yuri, Roma, Munich, NCT and INA. You can write in the chat to say where you are connected from. And before opening this celebration, a few words of introduction to allow our interpreters to warm up. You can listen in French or in English, and we will allow you to comment and ask questions in the chat, and we will select a few of them at the end of the first 3 sessions. And all presentation materials will, of course, be made available in early 2026. Since 2021, this annual meeting has been under the patronage of François Rabelais, but also, given the global context, we also sought the patronage of Galileo and Marie Curie. We will pay tribute to Sir David Nabarro, global expert on food systems, and Jane Goodall, exceptional primatologist and ambassador for our cousins, the chimpanzees. For this 2025 edition, here are 3 book recommendations for Christmas. Inconsistency by Olivier Amand, Sisyphus or The Search and the Quest for a Sustainable World by Olivier Dangles, and Decoincidental Research, inspired by the philosopher François Julien and his co-production. This annual festival is a celebration of science and its method, and it starts with knowing how to ask the right question. I wanted to set the example, and I asked my father to help. He's 100 years old. He's living in Lyon, the capital of former Gaul. He was born in 1925, where there were only 2 billion people on the planet. And I asked him to come up with 3 questions for our introduction. On the first day, he was embarrassed, telling me that it was a bit too much for him. On the second day, he said to me, "Why look for 3 questions? The title of the webinar is self-explanatory." And on the third day, he smiled at me and he said, "There are already 3 questions in the title. How can we provide healthy food to the world's population in 2050? How can we preserve the planet's ecosystem? And above all, the overarching question, how can we do both at the same time? Those are the questions raised by my 100-year-old father. We will have learned in 2050 to learn in harmony with nature. And this is with that hope that, without further ado, I invite Mr. Ambassador to officially open this 5th edition of our International Science Festival.
Merci beaucoup,
Thank you,
et
Raoul,
bienvenue à tous,
and
depuis
welcome
Rome.
to everyone
Je suis très
from
heureux
Rome.
d'ouvrir avec vous cette manifestation
I am really happy to
pour
open
couvrir
this
le monde en
celebration,
2050 tout en préservant la
feeding the
planète,
world
qui est un
in
domaine
2050
de
while
contribution à la
preserving
fête de
our
la
natural
science
resources.
via
It's
ce
a
webinaire.
major
Je voudrais vous
contribution
dire
to
combien
science and to
l'activité
this
des scientifiques
international
français à Rome
festival.
est
And
hautement évaluée.
the
J'ai pu me
activity
rendre
of
compte
French scientists
récemment,
in Rome is highly
avec
valued.
la
I have
visite tant de
seen
Philippe
that
Mauguin de
recently
l'INRAE que
by
d'Elisabeth
welcoming
Lavry de
Philippe
Saint-Martin.
Gauguin from
L'accueil qui leur a
and
été fait a
Elisabeth
été à la
Lavry de
hauteur
Saint-Martin
de
from
votre
Cirad.
travail et
They
j'ai pu
were
le voir
welcomed
aussi à Nice
and
lors du sommet de
their
Munoch
work was
avec la
valued.
présence
I was
de
also able
Valérie
to witness that in
Bruni-RD
Nice,
et de Jean-François Ollier de
um,
l'Ifremer.
seeing Valérie
À
Verdier
Nice,
from
la
IRD
France a fait le choix
and
délibéré
Jean-François
de
Ollier from
placer une
Ifremer.
conférence scientifique avant une négociation diplomatique.
We
Et
decided
je crois
to
pouvoir vous dire que
place
nous
a
pouvons être
scientific
heureux
conference
de cette
ahead
participation
of
de la
a
France
political
à la meilleure
negotiation
mise
in Nice.
en valeur de la
And
science
I
dans
can tell you
l'action
that
diplomatique.
France is
Nous
at the
sommes
forefront
en
of
effet aujourd'hui tous des enfants de la
uh,
science.
encouraging
Et ce webinaire,
science.
par
We
exemple,
are
n'aurait
all
pu se
children
faire
of
sans des recherches
science.
disciplinaires en
And this
informatique,
webinar would have not been
électromagnétisme
possible
et en
if
mathématiques aussi.
we had
Nous savons bien sûr que la chose qui
without the
s'intériorise
contribution
par des
of
enjeux mondiaux
scientists in
comme celui de la santé,
IT
la sortie de
engineering.
la crise Covid n'aurait pas été possible sans les
Without
vaccins.
researchers
Et on
in
pense bien sûr
healthcare,
à Pasteur
the
et à Louis
outcome
Pasteur.
would have not been possible
Mais
for
la science
for
nous rappelle
solving the
toujours aussi qu'elle
pandemic.
permet la construction d'armes
Science is
bactériologiques
also uh,
avec un lourd
can also
potentiel
be
de
used
destruction.
for
Les conflits le montrent malheureusement
designing
amplement dans le monde.
weapons
En outre,
and
le
contributing to
changement
conflicts
climatique,
in the
l'érosion de
world.
la biodiversité, la
Climate
pollution des
change,
océans,
loss
la
of
malnutrition et
biodiversity,
l'obésité,
pollution of
finalement la faim et
oceans,
la
and
pauvreté toujours présentes dans des
malnutrition,
millions de personnes,
obesity,
nous rappellent que la
and also
science
hunger
ne
that
saurait pouvoir tout
still
et
affects
qu'il faut
hundreds
aussi
of
un
millions of
moyen
people,
de solidarité,
um,
d'entraide,
reminds us
en un
that we
mot,
need
de
to be
confiance
ever
mondiale.
more
Science
together and work in solidarity.
et conscience globaux d'assurer la sécurité alimentaire pour tous de
We
manière
need
durable
to
sans dépasser les limites
be
planétaires.
aware of
Je
what
laisserai
lies ahead,
Elisabeth
feeding the
Lavry
world in
présenter plus en détail
2050
la
while
thématique
preserving
de
our
cette 5e
human
édition,
resources.
mais je souhaite insister
And
sur 2 points.
Elisabeth
La
Claverie
première chose,
Saint-Martin
c'est que la
will
diplomatie
introduce that
scientifique
further, but I would like to
est
stress
au
2
centre de l'action
points.
française et fera l'objet d'une conférence très
Scientific
récemment l'objet d'une
activity
conférence internationale
is
UNESCO.
a major topic
La
for
France
France
a
and
ainsi
will be
actualisé sa
showcased during
doctrine
a
de
UNESCO
diplomatie
summit.
scientifique en juillet 2025
France
et celle-ci
has
rappelle
also
toujours l'importance de la science dans les négociations. La
um,
présidence danoise du Conseil de
stressed the
l'Union
importance of
organisera
science
aussi
in political
une conférence
negotiation
dédiée
and
sur ce
scientific
sujet
diplomacy.
mi-décembre prochain. Je crois que notre approche de la science et de l'action diplomatique
I
est
think
encore
our
une dimension
approach
de
of
ce
science
qu'est
and
l'être
diplomacy
européen.
is
La COP climat à Belém en a
key
été un
to
exemple,
us
car
being
une
Europeans.
importante partie du travail
The
de
COP of
négociation est
Belém
basée sur les
has
rapports
shown
établis
this
par des milliers de
because
chercheurs.
negotiations are based on
C'est aussi le cas des experts
scientific
en
reports
biodiversité,
and research
de ceux
by
qui cherchent à comprendre la planète océan et les
world-class
impacts
scientists.
climatiques. Je pense à l'excellent travail de la division pêche et aquaculture de la FAO dont je sors à l'occasion d'un événement
We
sur la
also
publication d'un rapport
work
hautement
on
scientifique, hautement
fishing
apprécié,
resources,
ou
and
encore le travail des experts
I
HLPE auprès du
value the
CEST,
work
du Comité de la
made by
sécurité
the
alimentaire
Fishery
mondial, qui chaque
Management
année apporte
Service
une
of
expertise
FAO
collective
and the work done by the high-level panel of experts from the Committee of Food Security, working on a soil preservation, animal health, human health, and exploring the nexus between those dimensions as part of the One Health approach. It's important also to take into account local context, and as COVID taught us, the systemic relationships. In April 2026, France will invite its counterparts to a One Health Global Summit in Lyon, and FAO will be part of that. Close to where I am, there's a statue from Giordano Bruno that reminds us that science is linked with freedom. Freedom to think, freedom to explore, and freedom to share knowledge with all. This academic freedom is something to cherish, and to protect. This International Science Festival is also a tribute to scientists from yesterday and tomorrow, encouraging young people to build careers as scientists to shape the future, a future that is exciting and sustainable for all. This motto for today could be freedom, science, and conscience. Before handing over to Elizabeth, I would like to congratulate FAO and to celebrate its 80th anniversary. More than any other organization, FAO was built on scientific premises in order to protect future generation from war and hunger. This is our mission every day with Raoul Mille and all interns that work with us on a daily basis. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, and Elisabeth Clavry. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, dear Tanguy. Thank you for these introductive words, and thank you for this support to science, because these words are important for us. And I would also like to thank all the teams for all their work, for supporting our organizations, but more specifically for organizing this Festival of Science. We've been part of this festival for 5 years now, and we're proud of it. So thank you for your participation. For those who are here online around our digital table, and for all those who are going to view it later, thank you to our experts and our facilitators. Thank you for taking the time, because we know that it's not an easy period in the year, but for us, it's always been very important to take this time to celebrate science. Today, this year's topic is very important: feeding the world in 2050 while preserving the planet. We are a few years from 2030 now, and this question was one of the most difficult questions when the Sustainable Development Goals were written, were decided, and we had different goals like erase poverty, feed the planet, and fight climate change. Food was one of the most difficult topics on which to have indicators, and now it's it's still very difficult, but science is our intelligence. It is connected to intelligence, and we need loads of intelligence to have an intelligent way at seeing this question. and also to bring intelligent views to our decision makers, intelligent possibilities and avenues to think. There is limited time to take action, so we can't elaborate on all topics, but we'll try to bring light with different angles in different ways, with the state of knowledge we have, with the publications, but also with the state of practice in research. And this practice is very important for research because what characterizes us is being in the field and working operationally. So it's very important for us to have these different scientific contexts and apply methodologies in the field. In this framework, we are very happy to be partners with young researchers, especially researchers from the World Food Forum, from the FAO. These researchers are part of the forum, and they'll be attending our discussions too. There are young people from the youth chapter, the World Forum French chapter, and partners from all countries. And all this will be presented in a third session. So we will have very different views, also in terms of geographies. I hope all these will converge, but it will bring a richness in views. So how will our festival be organized? The first session will be on the state of the world, where we're standing, and where do we project ourselves for 2050. The second session will present the solutions that we are starting to work currently in different scientific disciplines with technologies, digital sciences, agroecology, for example, but also human behavior. And the idea is to show that there's no one single solution, but there are a few avenues of solutions that are complementary to bring a solution and feed the world. And the third session will be focusing on the modalities to transform food systems. How can we change our practices to better feed people? And how can we change more resilient and more sustainable and inclusive food systems? The last sessions will be on prospects, and it will show us the transformations on food systems in the framework of sustainable development, more generally speaking. So here's the journey we would like to offer to you today. And today is particularly important because, as you know, we read about it in the news, and it is quite frightening to know what is happening in the world. Science is under attack, under many forms of attack. There are debates on climate change. That's the first attack, but it goes far beyond that. It's more than just skepticism. There are attacks to science. Why do we spend so much money on it? Are scientific solutions reliable? But can we accept uncertainty? So we need to be here and reaffirm the power of science, the science that made progress possible, that science is reliable. Science is on the side of peace, on the side of progress for people. And also because scientists are just more and more erased from the world. And this is really difficult to live because we are sharing our methods, we are sharing our outcome, but we also need to share our uncertainties. And when we have doubt, we're okay to speak about these doubts. We are accountable for what we do, and science is accountable. And this is why it's unacceptable to attack science, because we will continue to commit to accountability and to defending the work of our researchers. But it's not always that simple to understand what science brings to the world, because the first thing is that crises are multiple. There are interconnected crises. There's a crisis on biodiversity on the one side that can seem to be remotely connected to agriculture, but it is actually connected. There is a crisis on mechanics. There are social crises, political crises, and all this makes it so complex that, of course, the assessment will be complex. The world is complex. Edgar Morin mentioned it, and we have tools to deal with this complexity. For example, there are many sciences about sustainability, and this science is equipped with a number of tools, and these tools make it possible for us to move forward. And something else that is relevant to say is that science cannot move forward on its own. It needs the support from people, from decision makers. It can be political decision makers, but also the support from citizens and farmers, because in the end, it's the people who are going to decide where we're going to head with their values, with their economic values. And we are here, we scientists are here, so that the collective choices are the best for the planet. And this is what we're going to try and show you, what makes our work valuable and difficult. I will end. I will conclude saying that we have a very good relationship with the three agencies in Roma, so the UNDP, the FIDA, and the FAO, of course. And I feel that institutions and research organizations really want to move forward and to offer solutions to people that are going towards progress and towards the eradication of poverty. So before I'm handing over to the experts who are going to give you more details about their references, I would also like to wish a very happy birthday to FAO and to the United Nations also. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Elisabeth. Before we move to the heart of our event, we'll have a few seconds of breathing, just a breather in between the sessions. Take a breath, push the button, and listen to the music.
Jean-François, Susanna, c'est à vous pour la session 1.
François, Susanna, you're up for the first session, The State of the World in 2025. Yes, thank you, Raoul. Thank you. Feeding the world in 2050 while preserving the planet is a major challenge, and we'll have a number of topics today that will help us apprehend this, focusing on food security and nutrition. Marie-Jo Amiot-Kerlin, we will present a global vision for food security and nutrition. She's a member of the high-level panel of experts for food security. The idea was to work on the nexus between food security and nutrition, taking a broader approach. on those two issues. Alban Thomas will explore and present an interdisciplinary program that leveraged forward planning and foresight studies to inform global food security. Bénédicte Gastineau will then talk about demography, and she will show the different demographic dynamics that are connected to feeding the world. And then we will have a presentation of what happened in the last 15 years, and showing the ever-increasing impacts of climate change. Paul Mousty from Cirad will present that topic. As Elisabeth said, there will be a second session on exploring solutions for feeding and preserving at the same time. And we will adopt a long-term approach in each of these presentations to show you how to tackle the decarbonation of the farming sector, how to solve the global crisis on biodiversity, soil degradation, and overexploitation of water resources and pollution. We will put in the chat the link to several reports around those issues. So without further ado, let's hear from our speakers, and feel free to comment in the chat. Thank you, Jean-François, for this introduction. Hi, everyone. Dear Mr. Ambassador and Elisabeth, for your introduction, and this will help me introduce the work of the high-level panel of experts on food security. Our mandate is to assess the various policies and the consistency between those policies. It's important to have an evidence-based approach to tackling those issues. Our mandate is rooted in the SDG 2, zero hunger. As Elisabeth said and highlighted, this is a very complex issue, talking about nutrition, undernourishment, obesity, etc. Against the backdrop of climate change and limited availability of resources.
S'inscrivent dans cette partie verte du donut que j'ai repris de l'article de Kate Raworth.
As you can see on the slide, this figure from Kate Raworth, you have the planetary boundaries on the outer circle and social foundations in the center. So the high-level panel of experts is made up of a steering committee with members from various backgrounds and countries. It provides high-quality, independent, evidence-based analysis and provides recommendations on policy topics through a scientific, transparent, and inclusive process. What is interesting with the HLPE is the mandate of updating conceptual and policy frameworks. In our report from 2020, food security was included in a conceptual framework that focuses on agency.
Sur les systèmes alimentaires résilients, on parle de résilience.
And in 2025, on its report on building resilient food systems, we talk about equitably transformative resilience. Our publications are of different kinds. You probably know about our in-depth report, which comes from our multi-year program of work on food security and nutrition. The last report dates from 2025, and its topic is building resilient food systems. We are working in 2026 on indigenous people, food and knowledge systems, and in 2027 on sustainable fisheries and aquaculture. We also work on background notes, underlying issues that are recurring issues. So you can see climate change, biodiversity. And another very important issue, which is strengthening responsible investment and financing for food security and nutrition. And last but not least, we also have work documents that are unsolicited from a third party, but that are considered current and critical by the steering committee. We are working currently on topic proposals for the next MIPO, multi-year program of work, on current and emerging issues. So in terms of, to conclude, I think that the HLPE enables an in-depth analysis, leveraging the diverse disciplinary, professional and geographical backgrounds of its steering committee members. We are supported in our work by a secretariat that I would like to thank for its excellent work, as hosted by the FAO. Which is important is adopting a systemic approach to food security and nutrition with a sustainability perspective. As a nutritionist myself, I am very happy that nutrition is part of the discussion now. And the HLP also works to ensure consistency in its recommendation, applying a scientific approach to scientific communication as the basis for possible transformation. And to leave you with a question, I think we can ask ourselves what impact do the recommendations and guidelines from our report have on the practical development of policies in its member countries. And on a personal note, and building on what was said previously, it's essential to invest in science, to innovate, develop and implement action proposals that are appropriate and suited to different food contexts. And last but not least, science and policy have a lot to gain from working together in a strong and efficient way. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Marie-Jo, and handing over to Alban Thomas.
Thank you very much. Thank you all of you. Elisabeth Clavry de Saint-Martin, Tanguy Sterlin. I am going to give you a presentation related to this first session, related on interdisciplinary program, a cross-disciplinary program supporting global foresight study on food security. This study was conducted by INRA at the time, INRA today, and I was working on it with Étienne Ravelin.
posé la question finalement de quelles étaient
The question
les
was,
transitions lourdes en cours, à
what
la fois
were
au niveau
the
technologique,
heavy
au niveau
transitions
démographique, au niveau
ongoing at
social et politique,
demographic level, political
que
level,
l'on devait
social and economic
infléchir afin de
level,
parvenir
and
à
what
un état de
transitions did we
sécurité
need to take
alimentaire et
to
sanitaire
reach
globale satisfaisant
food
à
safety,
l'horizon 2030
security,
ou 2050 dans un
and
contexte
food
de
health
différents changements
by
dont le
2050,
premier rang desquels le changement climatique. Donc,
and
plusieurs
taking into
dimensions
account
de la
climate
sécurité
change.
alimentaire et
So there
nutritionnelle ont été
were
abordées lors de,
several dimensions of food
ces travaux,
security
donc, au
during
sein
these
du métaprogramme.
studies of the META
Et
program.
l'intérêt, c'était
And the
d'être
interest of
parvenu
this
quand même
META
à
program
rassembler
was
des
to
communautés scientifiques,
bring
INRA
together
et
scientific
Cirad,
committees,
pour des
INRAE and
interactions
Cirad,
entre ces différentes dimensions qui portaient
that
d'abord sur les
have
transitions
interactions on
nutritionnelles
different
sur les différents
dimensions
régimes
on
alimentaires dans toutes les
nutritional
régions du monde, avec leurs
transition,
impacts sanitaires
diet
et
transition,
environnementaux,
with all
l'évolution ensuite
environmental
des
and health
pratiques et des risques
impacts.
liés
The
aux
evolution
technologies de
of
production, que ce soit
agricultural
en culture ou en élevage.
practices, whether
Quelles
we
étaient les
speak of
questions
growing
autour des changements d'affectation d'usage des sols
plants or
en lien
animals,
avec
animal husbandry,
l'évolution des espaces urbains
the
et la demande en terre
the
et
work on potential land
objectifs de
available
production
and the
agricole.
evolution of
Ensuite, des
the
procédés
needs of lands
et
for
des
agricultural
organisations
production,
afin de
then
limiter les
the
pertes et gaspillages,
processes and
notamment
organizations to limit
dans les
losses
questions de génie des procédés
and food
alimentaires.
waste in
Au niveau
food
des
processing.
ménages, l'accès à une
At
alimentation saine,
household level and
équilibrée et
access to a healthy,
en lien
balanced
avec la pauvreté
diet,
des populations et enfin des questions de
and
gouvernance de la
also
sécurité
affordable because
alimentaire.
it's also
Sur le
connected to
transparent
the
suivant,
question of poverty. And then there's a
vous
question of
avez quelques
governance of food
chiffres
security at the global
résumant
level.
finalement ce
A
métaprogramme
few
Grow Foods
figures
avec
for the Glow
plus de
Food
40
Meta
projets nationaux
program.
et avec des partenaires
There
internationaux
were
impliquant
45
25 pays dans quasiment tous les continents.
research project at
Puis
national and international
publication
level,
dans
so
des revues
involving more
internationaux
than
de
25
lecture,
countries on
impliquant
5
plus de 200
continents,
scientifiques, INRA,
also
CERAD et
involving
partenaires
more
notamment
than
dans les pays,
200
avec
scientists
35 thèses de
from
doctorat et différentes
30 different
disséminations sur
disciplines.
différents
Many
supports.
PhD
En termes
theses
d'action
were
soutenue,
written, and
il
many
s'agit bien
many
sûr de
students
travailler
and
d'abord sur
researchers were involved.
l'animation, le soutien de projets
To
collaboratifs
facilitate
entre les équipes
the
INRA et
collaboration
CIRAD
among
et
these
leurs
projects,
partenaires, mais
INRAE and
également
CIRAD
de
were
constituer
engaged,
des
and
dispositifs collectifs
we
partagés, qu'il
built
s'agisse de données, de modèles, de
platforms to
développement de
share
compétences
data,
via la
knowledge,
formation
and to
et
share
l'enseignement supérieur
skills
agronomique,
at
la
higher
construction
level,
de
higher
nombreux
education. We
partenariats
also
internationaux
built many
et
international
également
partnerships
l'appui à différentes expertises et
and we
perspectives sur la
supported
question de la
many
sécurité
expertise
alimentaire
on
globale.
food
Sur le
security
transparent
at
suivant,
global level.
vous avez la référence, alors, deux
Here
ouvrages.
is a
Alors,
reference
il ne constitue
to
pas finalement
two
le bilan
publications.
global du
It's not
métaprogramme
the
Grow Foods, mais
global
plutôt
outcome of the
des éclairages avec
Glow
la
Food Meta
version
program.
anglaise que vous avez là, la version
This is
française
the
est
English
un petit
version,
peu
but
plus
there
tard.
was also a French
C'est en accès
version
libre en
because it
fait
was
sur le site
translated a few
des
years
éditions
later.
INRAE, avec
It's
différents
free of
chapitres portant
access.
sur la gouvernance des systèmes
There are
alimentaires,
chapters
les
on food
innovations
systems
agroécologiques,
governance, on
les
links
procédés de
between
transformation
agricultural
dans la
supply
chaîne,
and food and
dans la
nutritional
chaîne
needs,
alimentaire, la mobilisation des ressources locales
agroecological
pour le levier de la
innovations,
sécurité alimentaire,
innovative
ainsi que la
processing
place des
methods for
agriculteurs
high
dans le
quality
système
food, agroecology,
alimentaire dans différentes régions.
and also mobilizing local
Transparent
resources and
suivant,
the role of farmers
je vous
in
disais
food
que le métaprogramme
systems.
Grow Foods avait été en appui à
The Glow
différentes
Food Meta
expertises
program
collectives et
supported
également des
different
prospectives,
collective
dont la
initiatives and
prospective
also
Agrément de Terra, qui a
foresight
été portée par
scenarios,
INRAE et
including
par
the
par
Agreement
CIRAD,
Terra foresight
sur
study
l'examen
that
finalement
was
de
carried by
scénarios
INRAE. And
d'évolution à la
it's
fois des régimes
an analysis of different
alimentaires,
possible scenarios of the
d'évolution
evolutions
des
in
systèmes de
our
production
food
agricoles,
systems. So as
des
far
nouveaux
as
procédés
food
de
production is concerned and
l'agroalimentaire, mais ça c'est quelque chose qui
food
était assez
consumption, food
original,
habits also.
l'introduction de tendances en termes d'urbanisation et
And
de
so
transformation
all
d'espaces,
topics were considered, such
tout
as
consistant
urbanization,
en une combinaison
trends,
d'approches
and all of it makes
qualitatives
it a very
à divers
qualitative
experts et
approach.
d'exercices de modélisation
And
sur,
it's an
sur une
expert
échelle globale,
modeling
aboutissant à un
exercise
ensemble de
that
scénarios qui ont été
ends
afin
up
de donner lieu à
in three
des
different
tendances sur les systèmes
scenarios
de culture, les systèmes
on which
d'élevage,
we
les
can
structures
project
agricoles, les
ourselves to
relations
better
entre les espaces
understand
urbains et les espaces ruraux et
agricultural
l'évolution des
issues,
régimes animaux.
socio-economic issues, and the
Par
also
suivant,
environmental
en termes de
issues.
conclusion,
As a
des
conclusion,
travaux de prospective globale
global
type
foresight
Agrimonterra ont
studies
nécessité un certain nombre de
similar to
développements
Agreement
interdisciplinaires, qu'il
Terra
s'agisse de
connected a lot
disciplines
of cross-disciplinary
biophysiques, agronomiques et également en
studies
sciences
in
sociales, en
biophysics,
mathématiques appliquées,
agronomy, mathematics
avec
also,
l'importance soulignée par le
and
métaprogramme GloFoods
the meta
d'alimenter
program
les approches de sécurité
focused
globale à
on
des approches
how
et solutions locales portées par notamment
local
par les partenaires
solutions
des pays du Sud.
were important.
Cette prospective Agrimonterra a fourni une
The
palette de
Agreement
scénarios
Terra
contrastés en
foresight
termes
gave
d'usage des terres, de régime
contrasted
alimentaire,
scenarios
également de
for land
perspectives de
use
productivité agricole,
and also
avec
for
un rôle majeur porté par les
farming
relations
productivity
urbain et
prospects, with a major
rural.
role of
Et cette
urban and
prospective
rural
montrait qu'il existait
relations.
quand même, heureusement, des scénarios
But
gagnant-gagnant,
some
impliquant
scenarios
quand
are
même
more
des transformations
positives. They are
importantes,
win-win
notamment de la
situations
diète
that
vers des régimes
lead
alimentaires
to
durables et
a
plus simples, permettant de limiter l'expansion des
positive
terres agricoles,
transformation of
je vais m'arrêter
agriculture.
là.
And
Merci beaucoup, Alban.
well, I'm
Donc,
going
nous
to stop here.
passons
Thank you.
maintenant
Thank you very
la
much for this
Bénédicte
presentation. We're now
Gastino
handing over
qui
to
nous parler de
Benedict
la démographie.
Gassino, who's going to speak about demographics.
Bonjour, merci à vous tous et
Thank you.
toutes. Merci pour cette invitation.
Thank you,
Donc, je suis donc
everyone.
effectivement
Hi,
démographe et
and thank you
démographe à
for
l'Institut de
inviting me.
recherche
I
pour
am
le
a
développement.
demograph
Et je m'intéresse
researcher
tout particulièrement au lien
at
entre les dynamiques
IRD, and
démographiques, les
I'm
changements environnementaux et
particularly
climatiques
interested in
plutôt en Afrique,
the relationships
soit à
between
l'échelle globale,
demographic trends
soit à
and
petites
climate
échelles.
issues in
Et c'est à ce
Africa,
titre-là
especially
que deux
at
questions m'ont été
a
posées
micro
pour ce
scale.
webinaire,
I
à savoir
tried to
que
answer two
savons-nous de la
questions
population à
for
venir, et en
this
particulier celle
webinar,
de 2050,
showing
et puis
you
comment
what we
se
know about the
construisent
global
les
population and
projections de
its
population. Alors donc le premier point, je
forecast
voulais vous
for
dire tout d'abord que depuis
2050.
1948, la
So
division
my first point is
démographique des
that
Nations
in
Unies publie régulièrement des annuaires de population
1948, the United
où on
Nations published the
mesure
first
la
democratic
population et
yearbook,
où on
and
décrit
it's
les
been
structures de
published ever
population
since,
par âge et
where
par
we
sexe.
analyze
Et depuis
the
1951, les
population
Nations
structures
Unies
by
publient
age and
régulièrement
sex.
des projections de
And
population
since
rudimentaires au
1951,
début. Ces projections se sont beaucoup affinées,
it
tant
developed the
sur le plan
first
technique que dans le choix des
well
hypothèses et
publication
l'éventail des
population
résultats.
prospects. Sorry.
Alors aujourd'hui, ces projections de
So
population, pour aller très vite,
today,
se
those
font en quatre
population
grandes étapes.
prospects
Donc
are
d'abord, il y a une collecte de données de
created
base
through four
sur la
major
fécondité,
steps.
sur la mortalité. Ce sont
So
des données qui sont fournies par les pays eux-mêmes.
collecting basic
Ensuite, il y a une
data
analyse des
on birth
tendances
and death.
démographiques
Those are
passées,
provided
présentes.
by the countries
Et
themselves.
puis, il y a un moment
There's
de
a
modélisation
trend
mathématique, bien
analysis,
sûr, qui repose
past
sur
and
des
current,
hypothèses d'évolution
and
de la
then there's a
fécondité
step
et de la
of mathematical
mortalité. Et
modeling
enfin, on produit donc des
for
scénarios, plusieurs
projection of
scénarios.
birth
On
and
produit un
death.
scénario bas,
And
médian et
we
haut
design
sur les projections de
scenarios,
population. Et ce sont ces scénarios-là qui sont publiés de façon
high
continue.
scenarios, but also low
Alors
scenarios,
ici,
depending on the
oui,
various
alors,
assumptions we make.
revenez à la slide précédente, s'il vous plaît. Merci. Ici à droite, vous avez un
And so
graphique qui
on
représente
the right, you
l'évolution
can
de la
see
population
a
mondiale,
figure
son taux de
representing the
croissance
global
entre
population
1950 et
size and
2022.
its annual
Et puis
growth
après, vous
rate
avez les
between
projections
1950 and
démographiques entre
2022.
2022 et 2050.
And you
Et ici
have
est représenté ce qu'on
a
appelle les scénarios
projection
médians.
from
Donc, pour aller
2020
vite, vous voyez qu'en
to
2050, on est
2050.
2,5
So
milliards et que
you
les
can
projections de
see that
population nous annoncent 9,7 milliards en 2050.
we will be
Suivante, merci.
over
Alors, à
9
quoi ressemblera la
billion people
population
by
mondiale en 2050?
2050. So the
Alors, vous le
question is,
voyez, la population mondiale va
how will it
croître
look
jusqu'en
like in
2050, mais à des
2050?
rythmes différents selon les
So
continents,
you
selon
can
les
see
pays,
here
bien sûr.
the
C'est
the
principalement l'Afrique
trends and
subsaharienne qui va
forecasts,
contribuer à la
but not
croissance
all
démographique
continental
des
regions
années à
follow the
venir. Des pays
same
comme la
path.
RDC, le Nigeria ou l'Éthiopie vont
Sub-Saharan
connaître des croissances
Africa
démographiques relativement
will
rapides.
contribute
Et à
mostly
l'inverse, on va
to
avoir
this
un grand
trend.
nombre de régions, voire de pays, qui
And
vont, eux, connaître
other
une
regions
décroissance de leur population.
will
Je pense à la Chine, au
face
Japon ou même à l'Europe
democratic
globalement.
decline,
Et
such
puis, il y a
as
un autre
China
changement
or
important
Europe.
qui est annoncé par les Nations
Another
Unies, c'est le doublement du nombre de personnes
factor
âgées de
is
65 ans et
the
plus d'ici 2050. On passerait de
doubling
9%
of
aujourd'hui, donc de
older
personnes âgées, à
people.
16% en 2050, avec des
We will
pays
have
comme le Japon, où en
60%
2050,
of
on aurait 40%
older
de la
people
population qui aurait plus
in the
de,
world in
enfin, qui aurait
2050,
65 ans
with
ou plus.
some countries
On
such
a
as
donc une
Japan
population mondiale, vous voyez, qui
accounting
se transforme à
with
plusieurs niveaux d'ici
40% of their
2050.
population.
Alors,
So
slide suivant.
there are changes
Merci.
projected
Alors,
in age
moi, je vous ai
structure by
présenté des
2050.
résultats, des projections,
So I've
mais est-ce que c'est
shown you
certain? Est-ce
those
qu'on a des certitudes? Alors, on
prospects,
a
but
des
are they
certitudes, hein, les
certain?
projections pour
Not really.
2050
So
sont
what are the
fiables, les
uncertainties?
évolutions sont
Our
connues, à
estimates
moins
by
bien sûr d'une
2015 are
catastrophe, comme je l'ai dit,
reliable,
ou presque, qui
except
provoquerait un
if
grand
there's
nombre de décès, notamment
a
chez les
major
personnes
disaster
âgées.
that will
Alors, est-ce que c'est imaginable? Est-ce qu'on peut
defy
imaginer une
those
catastrophe qui
forecasts.
fasse mentir les projections? Alors,
And
pour explorer
is
cette
it
question, j'ai
something
presque envie de vous conseiller de lire de la science-fiction, hein. Il y a
that
plein de
is
choses accessibles. Et là,
in
je
the
vous ai mis à
realm of
droite un exemple d'un
science
roman
fiction?
qui mêle
Maybe
science-fiction, alimentation
on
et
the right you can
démographie.
see a book
Ce qui est
of
probable, et c'est le plus probable, ce
sci-fi that
sont
is
des événements
talking
climatiques,
about
ou
this
sanitaires, des
topic.
conflits qui auront des effets non pas mondiaux, mais
What
localisés sur les
is
dynamiques de population à l'échelle d'une région ou d'un
most
pays, comme on
probable
l'observe
is
déjà.
that there will be local
Ça,
effects of
c'est
conflicts and climate
difficilement
events on
prévisible dans le
demographic
détail,
trends
mais
at a
évidemment, c'est
local
quasiment
scale and not a
certain.
global one.
Alors, pour
And
conclure,
this is almost
slide
certain.
suivante.
So as a
Pour conclure, je
conclusion,
dirais qu'il y a peu
I would say
d'incertitudes sur
that there's
l'effectif de la population
low
mondiale en
uncertainty
2050.
about the
La
world
population va
population
augmenter,
estimates
surtout
in
en Afrique, et surtout elle va
2050.
vieillir
It
partout.
will
Alors,
grow,
avant de
especially
terminer,
in
je voudrais quand même
Africa, and
reprendre son
especially it will
argumentation
grow older.
sur le lien entre les dynamiques démographiques
So
et l'alimentation. Donc,
talking
ce lien a
just
été
about
beaucoup étudié, souvent sous l'angle malthusien.
demographic
Et
trend
pourtant,
and
ce que montrent les recherches en
food,
démographie, et notamment celles que nous menons
this has been
en
studied a
Afrique
lot, especially
subsaharienne, c'est que les crises
with
alimentaires
a
ainsi que les défis
Malthusian
alimentaires n'ont pas grand-chose à
angle.
voir avec le nombre d'hommes ou de femmes,
But
mais comme ça a déjà été dit
what can
d'ailleurs,
be
bien
said is
plus avec
that the
des
link
enjeux
between
économiques,
demographic trends and
politiques,
nutrition is not
locaux et ou
based
internationaux.
on the
Et c'est
number of
plus
individuals,
compliqué qu'il
even
n'y
to
paraît, voire même,
population
le mot a été
density.
dit tout à
It's
l'heure, c'est
even
plus
more
complexe.
complicated than
Mais ce
that.
que permettent de dire les projections
But
démographiques, c'est
what
qu'ils
our
ça permet
prospects
d'identifier des
show is
régions qui, du
that
fait d'évolutions
we
démographiques
can
rapides ou plus
identify
rapides
regions
qu'avant,
that
vont
have
avoir à anticiper
that
des changements
grow
socio-économiques, dont
more quickly
certains
than
peuvent être des
others.
facteurs de vulnérabilité en termes
Um,
d'alimentation. Alors, je pense bien sûr à
and that can
l'urbanisation, mais
create
aussi au manque de main-d'œuvre dans certaines zones,
vulnerabilities
ou
in
même
terms
au
of
vieillissement. Voilà, je vous remercie de
nutrition
votre attention.
issues. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Bénédicte. Et donc, je passe la
Thank you
parole
very
à
much,
Paul
Benedict. I'm
Moustier,
now handing over to Paul
qui
Moustier.
représente la chaire aujourd'hui.
She will be representing today the chair today. I'm a chair for the MOISA that works on sustainable food systems, and these food systems, as the second slide shows, are submitted to a combination of increasing risks on climatic, health, economic, and political levels, and these risks were documented by a report from FAO in 2019. The context mingles many crises that ends up in the increase in price and the volatility in price. So the new challenge is to work on resilience and robustness and sustainability of the food systems rather than just profitability and produce more. In 2011 and 2020, there were food crises and there were global crises, and this was a reminder of the dependence on international markets for food. And there's major dependency for oil and gas, and also the production of nitrogen as fertilizers. And this dependency was particularly visible during since the COVID-19 crisis and the war in Ukraine. The International Land Coalition, FAO, and Cirad have made a study showing that 10% of landowners control 86% of lands in the world, especially in America, the American continent. There's also strong concentration in the market of seeds, of phytosanitary products, electronics, and the financial markets. In the face of these vulnerability and this concentration and the vulnerabilities they provide, we need to fight for food sovereignty. If we consider the quantity of food that is needed to feed the population, the planet is overproducing, and this overproduction has a cost: environmental costs, health costs, and social costs. However, after several decades of undernourishment at global level, for the past 7 years, there's an increase in undernourishment, especially with the explosion of conflicts. So we don't necessarily need to produce more everywhere, but we have to make food more accessible to the people in need and to save the rare resources. So we have to change the production models with two evolutions to optimize the use of natural resources, and we can combine these approaches. Technological innovations based on microgenetics and mechanics and agroecology that optimizes the health of soils and plants. And biomass was really at the heart of all food processes. We could use a more diverse use of biomass to get out of the dependency on fossil fuels. As a conclusion, this is my last slide, food systems are at a crossroads. There are many possible directions that are more or less inclusive and more or less sustainable. The challenge is not so much whether we will produce enough to feed the world, but rather how we will produce and who will decide. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. I'm handing over to Raoul for a questions and answers session. So we have a few minutes, just a few minutes, and Louise will ask a few questions to our panelists. The questions were in the chat, yes? We have a question in the chat asking concrete example. It's a question to HLPE. So we would like an example of a national example of a policy. So this is a difficult question because we don't have the information on impact. I can't really answer your question, unfortunately. Okay, no problem. We have a second question, which is focusing on insecurity, food insecurity factors. If you take into account the fact that demography is not the main factor, what is the main factor to fight food insecurity?
François, distribue à qui tu veux, voilà.
Who wants to answer this question? Well, I can bring a few elements. There's a question of accessibility. It's also the question of accessibility, geographical accessibility, but also financial accessibility, so affordability. And this is very important because we can have enough food, but it needs to be diversified. And food insecurity is facing economic constraints, but there are also social constraints. Would you like to bring a compliment, Paul? Because Paul, what you mentioned, the price volatility and price increase also has an impact on availability and affordability. And of course, wars and conflicts have a major impact on food accessibility, and this has a dramatic impact on the most vulnerable populations, meaning children, women in age to give birth, and this has very negative impact on their health. So it's a negative impact on the world of tomorrow.
Oui, ben,
Exactly. So bringing a few compliments to what Marie-Jo said, many farmers are themselves in a situation of food insecurity because they have such a small plot to work on, and access to equipment, to input is very hard for them, even to transportation's means. So it's very important to support these farmers on a technical way, but also institutionally and logistically.
Troisième question.
Third question?
Sur la répartition agraire, justement, pardon, sur les 10% de propriétaires qui contrôlent
There was a question about on the fact that 10% of people owned 86% of land. What proportion of these 10% are bank themselves? Well, the report is going to be out and there's going to be more details in this report. But I can say that, yes, indeed, a majority of these 10% are multinational companies, and pension funds also play a major role in this land grabbing phenomenon.
Quatrième question.
A very short question number 4. Yes, in new models, how can we arbitrate between technological innovation and agroecology without opposing young people, rich people and poorer people? This is a very legitimate question. We've been talking of responsible, inclusive innovation. This is because digital innovations can be inclusive when they allow for small farmers to access the market and to be in a relationship with consumers. What is important is to push the digital transformation, but with equipment and training support. Thank you very much. François, you have 60 seconds to close this first session. That was an introduction on research, and after Jean-François, we'll have a short break. Thank you, Raoul. Thank you all for your presentations. They were very rich. What I think what is quite fascinating if we dive into scientific thought and into food and nutrition issues, it's the fact that there's no one single solution. In each discipline, there are complementarities between the systems, between the regions are very different from one another, so we need scientific expertise to have a better global overview, thanks to panels that were already mentioned, including HLPE. We need this expertise to be a scientific interface with society and with public policies, and this at all levels, globally, but also at national levels, so that we can co-construct an inclusive system for the future that is validated scientifically speaking, and where every stakeholder can understand the social and environmental implications of the systems. But there will be no fair transition if we don't have a scientific approach. This needs to be also connected to the question of rights to food. And this hasn't been mentioned here, but it is fundamental here. There are claims to human rights, and the legal claims are also important to push this transition forward. Thank you very much, all of you. We are going to have a breather, 26 seconds before we move on to the second session, solutions for feeding and preserving, but short break before.
Kenza Bouzouba, donc place à la jeunesse, notre animatrice pour le...
Kenza Bouzouba will be our facilitator for the second session, and so the floor is yours. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Kenza. I am delighted to be hosting this second session entitled Solutions for Feeding and Preserving. Even from a distance, the presentation that we are about to hear will take us from one idea to another to better understand how to build more sustainable food systems. So fasten your seatbelts because the exploration begins online. We will start with Carol Caranta from INRAE, who will present varietal selection to address climate change and build sustainable farming systems. She will explain how to develop more resistant plants that are capable of adapting to new environmental conditions. This is a key element to maintaining production while preserving resources. Next, a complete change of scenery. We will move from genes to algorithms with Thierry Fourcault from Cirad, exploring the topic of algorithm for better farming, better nutrition, better protection. He will show us how modeling and digital tools can provide concrete solutions for optimizing agricultural practices, and thus demonstrate that technology can truly support sustainability. Then we will dive into agroecological transition with Laurent Cournac from IRD and NDA Hélène Diallo-Diang from ISRA in Senegal. Their presentation will be focused on agroecological transition in the face of food and environmental challenges. It will highlight the issues for research and the transformation that are needed to build more resilient agricultural systems. And to conclude, we will raise a question that everyone asks themselves without daring to admit it. So changing your eating habits, is it a challenge? Sophie Niklos from INRAE will help us understand what really influences our food choices and what strategies can encourage more sustainable behaviors. After these presentations, we will move on to a Q&A session, so feel free to keep your comments and questions in mind and write them in the chat, either in English or in French. Thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoy this journey through science, innovation, farming practices, and human behavior as much as I do. Have a great session, and without further ado, let's hear from Carol Caranta from INRAE. Hi everyone, thank you very much Kenza for this excellent introduction. I will talk about varietal selection to address climate change issues and build sustainable farming systems. So agriculture is at the crossroads of various issues to ensure food security for the global population. And one of those key issues is climate change. This is one of the most pressing and concerning issues of our time. With evolving climate conditions, trend evolutions, as shown on the slide, but also extreme weather events that are increasing and a stronger variability seasonally. So climate change has clearly adverse impacts on plants, both in terms of development, increased sensitivity to diseases, and also an impact on crops, of course. You can see here that in France, we have observed a stagnation of yields since 1990. So climate change also has an impact on the different steps of plant development with an earlier flowering. It's, for example, the case of the Riesling variety in eastern France. So varietal selection is absolutely one of the solutions to tackle that issue. The idea is to select more resilient, more climate resilient plants that are able to adapt to climate change. You can see here two examples of plants that are selected to resist better to mildew, which is a fungus, in order to have potatoes that are more resilient and also vineyards that are more resilient to that disease.
On revient sur la slide d'avant, s'il vous plaît, qui vise à développer des plantes capables de résister
The
à des
idea
sols tardifs
is
qui sont
to
beaucoup plus fréquents,
develop plants that are
sélectionner des plantes qui
more
permettent de passer au travers du stress
capable of
hydrique ou de
adapting
grandes périodes de
to
froid.
water stress
Diapositive
or
suivante.
cold.
Donc, en plus de la sélection de
So,
plantes plus résistantes et plus efficientes,
beyond selecting
un fort
more
enjeu de
resistant,
l'amélioration des
more
plantes est de sélectionner
climate
de
efficient
nouveaux
plants,
caractères.
the
Alors, je vais
ideal
vous
is also
citer
to
dans les
design new
diapositives qui
characters
suivent
through
quelques
selection.
exemples de nouveaux
And I will give you a
caractères
few
pour
examples in
lesquels
the slides
on
to
essaye de
follow.
comprendre les mécanismes et ensuite initier des
The
programmes de
idea is to
sélection.
understand the
Le
mechanisms first and
premier
to
exemple concerne
design
la sélection
selection
pour l'allélopathie.
as a consequence.
Diapositive précédente. Merci. Donc, vous le savez peut-être, mais
So
les plantes
here we are
communiquent entre elles par des
focusing
signaux
on
biochimiques. Et
allelopathy,
l'idée
which
est
is
de
the
guider par la sélection
idea
ces
that plants
communications
are
entre plantes. Vous avez ici
communicating
illustré l'exemple
through
bien connu
chemical
allélopathique
interactions,
qui, grâce à
and
la sécrétion d'une molécule
we
qui s'appelle les momilactones, permet de
we
limiter la croissance des mauvaises herbes entre
try
grains.
to
Diapositive suivante.
conduct allelopathic variety
On peut
selections to
également
foster
imaginer
varieties that are
sélectionner
more
pour
resistant.
des plantes qui contribueraient à l'atténuation
We
du changement
also
climatique. Donc des plantes qui sont
try
conçues
to
avec un système
foster
racinaire
plants that
plus
are able
performant
to mitigate the
pour
impact
améliorer
of
la
climate
photosynthèse,
change, for example,
l'accumulation
by
de biomasse et
increasing
ainsi optimiser
carbon
le
capture
stockage
in
de
the
carbone
soil
dans les sols. Dernier
through
exemple,
plants.
qui est un projet
And
soutenu par un
another
financement
example
européen,
is a
serait de
project
sélectionner des plantes plus attractives pour les
with
abeilles,
EU funding.
permettant d'améliorer
The
la
idea is to
pollinisation
select
et donc
plants
de
that are
limiter
bee
les pertes
friendly
de rendement qui sont observées
to
partout dans le monde, comme
limit
illustré sur cette petite
yield
carte.
declines.
Diapositive suivante.
As shown on the
Alors,
map,
au-delà
it is a
des
worldwide phenomenon.
caractères à sélectionner, qu'ils soient habituels, usuels ou
So,
nouveaux, il faut savoir
whether
aussi que le
by selecting
processus de
existing
sélection variétale est
traits
un
or
processus long et
emerging
coûteux.
traits,
Il faut entre 7 et
selection
15 ans
is
pour
a
obtenir
long-term
de nouvelles
process
variétés.
between
Donc l'enjeu
10 and 15 years to
les enjeux
create
d'aujourd'hui
new
sont
varieties
de
of plants.
mobiliser
So,
les
one
outils
of the
récents et
key
les nouvelles
challenge
méthodes de
is to
sélection
leverage
pour non seulement accélérer,
new
mais
tools
aussi
to
mieux
accelerate
utiliser la
selection
diversité
and also
génétique.
leveraging
Il
genetic
s'agit,
diversity
entre autres, de mobiliser l'ensemble des connaissances acquises sur
by
les génomes des plantes
using
ces dernières années sur la diversité,
all our knowledge
de
on
mobiliser,
genomic
par exemple, et quand c'est nécessaire, des technologies
characters,
d'édition du génome qui permettent de générer de la
using
diversité,
technologies such
de
as
développer
genomic
le
editing,
phénotypage qui consiste à mesurer les caractéristiques des plantes
also
pour les
relying on
développer à haut
phenotyping,
débit et
which
également
is
de caractériser l'environnement à haut débit.
the
La
idea
combinaison
of
de l'ensemble de ces approches
observing the
permet
plant
aujourd'hui
phenotypes.
d'initier des programmes de
And
sélection
last but
qui
not least,
permettent
envirotyping,
d'accélérer le processus et de
is
mobiliser la
one
diversité
way
génétique.
to accelerate
Diapositive suivante, s'il
selection
vous plaît.
and using genetic
Alors, je
diversity.
vous parle beaucoup de
Next
sélection,
slide.
mais un message
So,
clé à retenir de cette
I've been
présentation
talking
est
about
que la
selection a
sélection
lot, but
variétale
one key
vient être
takeaway
un
is that
levier clé, mais
varietal
qui reste à
selection is one of the
combiner avec
levers,
d'autres pour faire face aux
but
grands
not
défis
the
de
only one. It can
l'agriculture
be
et
combined
en
with
particulier
others
la mobilisation de pratiques
to address the
agroécologiques.
challenges
Et j'en arrive à
facing
la
agriculture and
diapositive de
fostering
conclusion.
agroecological practices. So as a
faut clairement
conclusion,
se projeter
we need
et
to
s'adapter aux incertitudes en lien
project in the
avec le
future
climat, que ça
and
soit
adapt to
en
uncertainties
termes d'accès
that are
ou
climate
de
related,
manque d'eau, de
whether it
température,
be
d'effets cumulés
excess
d'événements
water or
extrêmes et d'effets
drought,
régionaux qui sont de plus en plus
rising
différenciés.
temperatures. We
De
need to take
regarder
into account
également
the cumulative effects of
l'évolution de la
extreme
pression des
events
bioégresseurs qui sont
and
eux-mêmes impactés
differentiated
par le changement
regional
climatique.
impacts.
J'espère que je vous ai convaincu que la sélection
I
variétale
hope
était un
I have
levier
convinced you that
incontournable
varietal
pour
selection is
l'adaptation de l'agriculture au
an
changement
essential
climatique,
lever
mais
for
aussi pour son
mitigating and
atténuation
adapting
et qui
to
s'intègre aux
climate
pratiques
change
de transition
when talking about
agroécologique.
farming
Les
and
défis de la sélection
agroecological
sont nombreux,
transition.
mais pas inatteignables.
Varietal
En
selection has
mobilisant les
to
nouvelles méthodes de sélection, en
overcome
revisitant et en
multiple challenges.
priorisant les objectifs de sélection, en intégrant par exemple
So it's
d'autres
important
composants
to
comme une des sols
prioritize
qui permettent d'améliorer
goals,
la performance
integrate
des
other
variétés
aspects,
et d'accroître la
and
diversité des espèces
increase
cultivées, ainsi que la
diversity of
diversité au sein des variétés.
crops
Merci de
and
votre attention.
varieties. Thank you for your attention.
Merci Carole Caranta pour votre
Thank you, Carole
intervention.
Caranta, for
Et je
your
cède la parole
presentation.
maintenant à
I'm now
Thierry
handing
Fourcault du CERAD.
over to Thierry
Merci.
Fourcault
Merci
from
beaucoup, j'espère que vous
Cirad.
m'entendez bien.
I hope you
Je
can
vais
hear
vous
me
emmener faire un
fine.
petit voyage dans le monde des
I'm going
algorithmes.
to
Et les
make
algorithmes, c'est pour
you
nous aider
to
à
take you to
maîtriser, nous
algorithm
nourrir,
world
mieux protéger.
to
En tout
help
cas, c'est à
us
espérer.
better
Alors d'abord, qu'est-ce que c'est
farm,
qu'un algorithme?
better
Un
feed, and
algorithme
better
sert à dire à
protect people.
l'ordinateur quoi faire et dans quel ordre,
So
et ensuite ça se
algorithms
traduit dans un
are
langage de programmation.
computers that
Alors,
help us
nous sommes réunis aujourd'hui pour
know
parler
what to
des
do.
enjeux nourrir le monde
Here
en 2050 tout
we
en
are
préservant
here
la
to
planète,
speak
vaste
of a
sujet.
world in
Dans un contexte de
2050
changement
and
global,
preserving
une
the world in a
planétaire
context of global
déjà
change,
dépassée, et qui met
where
sous
we've
pression
already
les agricultures mondiales. Alors, je vais vous présenter
gone
comment ces algorithmes peuvent permettre
planetary
de mieux voir, de
boundaries.
mieux comprendre, de mieux anticiper et mieux accompagner les
Algorithm can help
consommateurs des
us better
solutions à
understand and
travers
better
quelques exemples
anticipate
concrets qui sont directement
solutions
issus des
through
travaux menés
concrete
par
examples that
nos
are
unités de
based
recherche,
on
Cirad, partagées avec nos
the
partenaires,
research
INRAE, INRB,
works
l'Université de
from
Montpellier,
our
etc.
research units and
Suivant.
our partners.
Le premier exemple
The first
présenté
example
ici traite des
we
algorithmes
present here
utilisés
is
pour
about
observer, détecter des
algorithms
tensions
used
alimentaires
to detect
avant qu'elles ne se
food
transforment en
tensions
crise.
before they turn
Alors,
into
les méthodes
crisis.
classiquement
So
utilisées de surveillance de la
classically,
sécurité
the
alimentaire
methods that are
reposent
used
sur des
to
indicateurs
work on food
précis, par
safety are
exemple
based
les
on
scores de
very
consommation
specific
alimentaire,
indicators such
le
as
score de diversité
food
alimentaire. Les
scoring,
indicateurs
food diversity score.
traditionnellement sont issus d'enquêtes,
Traditionally,
mais qui
these
sont
indicators
difficiles à
are
obtenir,
based
en
on
particulier dans les
surveys, but
zones de
these
conflit ou
the
les zones
data
touchées
is
par des
hard to
catastrophes
collect
climatiques.
in areas where
Mais
there
grâce à
are
la fouille
conflicts
automatisée,
or
l'article de
natural
presse
disaster. But
ou
thanks
d'échange
to
de messages dans les réseaux
algorithms
sociaux,
and also thanks
couplé avec
to
l'analyse
information in the
satellite,
media, on the
il
social
est possible
networks,
d'obtenir
and
des informations
to
spatialisées en temps
observation
réel.
through satellite,
On
we
voit
can
ici
get
d'ailleurs un exemple de
real-time
cartographie de ces
information. You can
indicateurs
see a
pour le Burkina
real-time
Faso.
mapping that is made for Burkina
Suivant.
Faso here.
Les algorithmes, pour
Algorithms
donc
can
transformer
also
des
be
millions de
used
mesures en
to
connaissances
better
scientifiques
understand and
exploitables
transform millions
est un
of
défi majeur pour
measures
la recherche.
into
Et pour être
actionable
raccord avec la
knowledge.
présentation que vient de faire Carole,
And in
nous
reaction
prenons
to what
pour
Carole
exemple le
just said,
phénotypage
the
qui vise
example
à
is
comprendre comment les gènes et
phenotype
l'environnement
to better understand
influencent les
how
caractéristiques
genes
morphologiques,
and the
biophysiques,
environment
biochimiques des
have
organismes.
an impact on
Alors,
the
dans cet exemple
organisms and their
précis, les
biochemistry.
algorithmes aident à traiter des données qui
Algorithms
sont
also
nombreuses et
help us
issues de divers capteurs
process
qui
a
sont
huge
mis
amount
en
of
particulier
data
sur le terrain, mais pas que, dans
with
les laboratoires aussi,
sensors in the
pour
field, but
sélectionner des
also
plantes
in
adaptées aux
labs to
conditions de
select
culture, ce que
plants that are
j'appelle ici la
adapted
super plante,
to farming
un peu par
conditions.
provocation. Ces
I
recherches
call it the
s'appuient
super
par
plants, but
exemple
it's
sur des
just a
modèles de
provocation, of course.
reconstruction, d'analyse et de simulation de l'architecture
And with
tridimensionnelle des plantes
analysis
ou
and
découvrir des photos,
simulations, we can
ces outils demandent aussi un savoir-faire,
find
notamment en
solutions, but it also
modélisation
requires
mathématique.
to handle modeling
Les
and
algorithmes nous donnent une
mathematics.
longueur d'avance sur les crises, en
Algorithms also help
particulier
us
les
anticipate
crises
on
sanitaires,
crises,
l'exemple que je vais
especially
traiter
health
ici.
crisis,
Donc une règle dite
which is the
syndromique
example I'm
est
going to
faite par des
have.
algorithmes d'intelligence
We
artificielle.
can use
Enfin, on en
artificial
arrive là.
intelligence to
Là encore,
plan,
ces travaux sont faits à
but
partir d'articles de presse et
these work are also
de
based
réseaux
on
sociaux.
press articles and social media. It's not really targeting any specific disease, but they are targeting keywords on concerns, and these keywords are going to identify weak signals, to identify signals of the outburst of a new epidemic, and it will help us make prevention and block any propagation of epidemic. And all the different institutions work on this to show how, for example, here on this map, the bird flu can be propagated in the United States, for instance. It is also essential to put these technologies in the hands of the ones who take actions, and to integrate these technologies at all levels of the value chains so that we can reduce uncertainty that is related to climate, to the financial market, and this will improve the autonomy of the different stakeholders. The examples you can see on the pictures on the right-hand side show digital apps that can be used to detect any plant disease in the context of the PlantNet project, for example, to identify plants. But there are many, many different applications. As a conclusion, well, it's not really a conclusion, it's an opening to a debate. The fact that algorithms and digital tools can really help us cultivate better, feed better, and protect the planet, and they are an accelerator of sustainability, but they could also be wrongly used and amplify inequalities. So we need to find the right balance and the right way to use these technologies. And I would like to thank you for your attention and thank all the team, and this may be my next slide, all my colleagues who contributed to everything I just presented to you. Thank you very much, Thierry, for this intervention. And I'm now handing over to Laurent Cournac from IRD.
Oui, bonjour, c'est plutôt Ndeye Hélène qui va commencer la présentation.
Yes, this will be Ndiaye speaking first. So Ndiaye Hélène Diallo Diagne from Israel, Senegal, the floor is yours. Hello, I don't know if you can see me on your screen.
Voilà, c'est ça. Je vous remercie en tout cas pour
I thank you for this opportunity that is offered to me today to be part of this festival, explaining to you what the agroecological transition in the light of food and environmental challenges, and what are the issues and stakes for research. Okay, there was a technical glitch, but okay, I am a researcher focusing on soil, and let me stress that soil is very, very important and understudied. It's not just a production means, but it is a natural capital that needs preserving, essential for a preservation of biodiversity and water preservation.
Un appauvrissement en matière organique, comme le montre sur cette carte réalisée pour le Sénégal en 2021. Des pH acides, donc
the maps on the left show the breakdown in terms of organic matter and acidification of soil in Senegal. So if the soil is not healthy, there can be no food security, no resilience. And
s'il vous plaît, vous pouvez appuyer encore.
Yes, can you
Il y a donc nécessité de
move
repenser les pratiques
forward in your
agricoles
presentation? Thank you.
et
So we need to reinvent farming practices to ensure
transition
sustainability.
agroécologique pose comme une voie incontournable.
And
Elle doit être
agroecology is
fiable sur
an
l'état de nos
essential
sols pour
pathway
éclairer,
that we need to
accompagner
take
les
that
projets
has to be
développer
based on
des innovations adaptées
reliable
aux réalités
data,
locales. Et ceci dans une démarche
supporting
participative
also
avec
local
co-construction
dynamics,
des dynamiques
so based on
organisationnelles telles que
co-construction,
la dynamique pour la transition agroécologique au
training,
Sénégal,
both
comme
academic and
l'a
vocational,
évoqué,
and
Cirad.
networking.
Depuis près de 10 ans, nous avons engagé
For
des actions avant-gardistes.
over 10 years now. No, sorry, previous slide.
Depuis
yes.
près de 10 ans, nous avons
So for
engagé des actions structurantes
10 years,
depuis la mise en
we
place
have
de plateformes
launched
écologiques jusqu'à
structuring
aujourd'hui
actions such as
les
the
réflexions
creation of a
la
national
stratégie
platform for
nationale
ecological and organic
d'agroécologie
farming,
récemment
up
alignée
to
à la
a
loi
national agroecology strategy that is still ongoing.
Et cette dynamique nationale s'aligne parfaitement sur
And
les
this
grandes orientations
national
bien
dynamic
continentales qu'internationales,
is
telles que
aligned with both
le plan d'action
continental
sur
and
du Fonds africain sur les
global
engrais et la santé des
requirements.
sols en 2024, ou bien la motion 007 de l'UICN sur la sécurité des sols, qui montre que la communauté scientifique
It's also recent events at the African scale and world scale show that soil health is to become an essential pillar of our strategies for food security.
D'améliorer la gouvernance des sols. Slide suivante. Diapositive suivante.
So next slide, please. Thank you. It's important to promote soil governance and integrated approaches so that innovation can be implemented in the field. So it's important to put people at the center of our action, co-constructing and monitoring
de suivi, les approches de modélisation, mais aussi socio-économiques.
So monitoring our engagement strategies, but also coordinating action.
Elle se construit grâce à une recherche engagée, ouverte.
Research needs to be a committed, open, and overarching, cross-disciplinary. Thank you, Hélène. So this was an overview of what has been ongoing in Senegal. And talking about agroecology, it's a multidimensional approach that has been structured by the HLP and FAO. So I will not go into too much detail, but for agroecology, the idea is to leveraging practices based on agrosystem ecology. The aim is to foster sustainable and resilient production and value chains in terms of agronomy, economy, and environment. Against a backdrop of fair and inclusive social, economic, and governance system that is culturally rooted and respectful. So those are the guidelines to foster agroecological transition. Of course, there will be different pathways depending on the starting point, whether we have a subsistence agriculture or an industrial agriculture. Both systems are not satisfactory for different reasons,
Mais pour arriver à cela, il s'agit de fédérer des
And
connaissances.
the
Donc, des
idea is
connaissances
to
académiques, comme
leverage,
l'a dit Hélène,
gather and
et donc
leverage
ça ouvre de nouveaux fronts de sciences.
scientific knowledge.
Donc, Carole a bien parlé de cible de sélection. Effectivement, si on veut
As
des variétés
Carol said,
qui
she
valorisent
talked
les
about
interactions biologiques,
selecting
ça va être quelque
varieties
chose
that
de
efficiently
différent de ce qu'on a
enhance
l'habitude de faire par la sélection.
interactions
Et donc, ça ouvre tout un ensemble
with soil
de
organisms.
champs de recherche extrêmement
And this is a
stimulants.
very
Donc,
this is a new front for
c'est
research, a
également,
new
si on va vers des systèmes diversifiés, agroforestiers par exemple, bien raisonner la
border
fertilisation,
for
raisonner
us.
la lutte contre les bioagresseurs par exemple, c'est quelque chose de beaucoup plus complexe.
We
Et donc, on
also
a des outils conceptuels, des outils pratiques, des outils technologiques à
have
inventer au sein de
to
l'agroécologie.
invent
Ce
new
n'est pas une
tools.
science au rabais. C'est la diapositive suivante. Alors là, j'ai regroupé quelques exemples. Vous avez donc
So next slide, you can see here a few examples. I'm sorry we are running out of time, but you can go on the Agroecology Coalition website to learn more about different use cases in various parts of the world, where there are emerging networks of actors that are committed to changing farming practices by fostering cooperation between researchers and farmers in within what we call living labs. Research is also important to assess impact.
Est-ce que ce que l'on fait, ça va dans le sens de la transition agroécologique?
And the question is, do we act to foster agroecological transition or not? We have to assess our impact. And a number of studies have focused on assessing this, this aspect. Next slide is about a tape assessment tool for agroecology performance evaluation, trying to see how far agroecology has got. And in respect with different factors. So, of course, without surprise, agroecology is beneficial to biodiversity, health, soil health also. But more surprisingly, it's also correlated with a more satisfactory diet score. So agroecology is not an obstacle to food security, on the contrary. And this is very encouraging for the future. So I will stop at that. And my last slide, please. The challenges for research lies within research itself. The idea is to adopt a more open, society-oriented positioning to foster agroecology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Inde and Laurent, for your very interesting presentations. I'm now handing over to Sophie Niklaus from INRAE.
Sophie Niklaus de l'INRAE.
Sophie Niklaus, are you with us?
Elle m'avait envoyé un petit message que
she sent me a message telling me she had a computer issues. Oh,
Sophie, voilà.
Sophie, yes, can you hear me?
C'est bon maintenant?
C'est parfait pour 6 minutes. À toi, Sophie.
You have 6 minutes, Sophie. Time is yours.
Je vais vous parler du point de vue du consommateur.
I'm going to speak from the point of view of consumers because in food systems, in food systems, we always come up to consumers because they are the final person who is going to eat fruit and vegetables. So we're going to question the difficulty to change consumer behavior.
Nous faisons le constat au travers de
So
différentes études,
the
notamment
assessment
travail qui a
is
été mené par la
through
commission ECNANSET,
studies we've conducted
de la
with the
dégradation
ECNANSET
des régimes alimentaires,
Commission.
aux
The
recommandations qui seraient
assessment
nécessaires
is
de
that
suivre à la
we
fois
need
pour
to make
respecter les
recommendations
principes
to
d'adéquation
uh,
nutritionnelle, mais aussi pour éviter
stand
les
by
impacts environnementaux
nutritional
importants.
recommendations and
Donc, il a
also
appelé à travail
environmental
nécessaire d'apporter des
recommendations.
changements
It
au
is
régime
necessary
alimentaire,
to
mais
change
il est
food
difficile
diets,
d'apporter ces
but
changements,
it is
changer
important
les
to
habitudes est une
change
difficulté qui est
habits.
comprise également dans l'oxymore de cette expression. En
Changing
effet,
habits is the
les
most
habitudes jouent
difficult
un rôle
part.
essentiel dans l'optimisation
Habits
de nos
play a
comportements, et ça,
vital
c'est des
role in
éléments qui nous sont
optimizing our
transmis
behaviors,
notamment par nos collègues spécialistes en
and this
psychologie,
was
notamment parce que les habitudes réduisent le poids des décisions que
studied
nous
by
devons
our
prendre chaque jour,
psychiatrist colleagues,
notamment en matière
and
de choix
especially
alimentaires,
because
en
we
libérant
have
notre énergie
to make
mentale pour des tâches plus
everyday
exigeantes. Donc,
choices and
vraiment ce
free
que la
up our mental
psychologie cognitive
energy
nous apprend.
for
Je vais
for more
avancer, s'il vous
demanding
plaît.
tasks, and this is what
On va s'intéresser à deux sujets en
psychology
particulier
teaches
qui
us.
concernent
So we're going
la
to look into
consommation
two more
alimentaire,
specific
la
details on
consommation de viande
food
et notamment la
consumption,
surconsommation
meat consumption, and
qui
especially
est constatée
meat
notamment dans les sociétés
overconsumption,
développées, et aussi
especially in
la
developed
qualité des régimes,
societies,
notamment
and the
nutritionnels,
quality
avec
of
avec
diets
la surconsommation
with the
de sel, de
overconsumption
sucre
of
et de
salt,
matières grasses
sugar, and
saturées,
fats,
notamment dans les régimes
and
qui
saturated
sont
fats,
observés dans les pays développés.
especially in
Alors, comment aborder
developed
cette question?
countries too.
Si on
So,
reprend
how to
ici ce
breach
schéma
this
du
question? If
panel
you
d'experts de haut
look
niveau,
at this scheme
on
that was
voit
produced by
celle
the
du
high level
consommateur dans
panel
le
of
système
experts,
alimentaire. Il s'agit du
you
carré
see
vert
that
qui est au milieu du
the
système
green
alimentaire.
square at
On
the
va
heart
zoomer un
of the
petit peu
food
et je vous demande
system
de
is
passer à la
consumer
suivante
behavior.
en restant sur ces diapos. Merci. Je vais m'intéresser en
I'm
particulier à
going to look
l'interface entre les
into the
environnements alimentaires et
interface
le
between
comportement des
food
consommateurs.
environments and consumer
On
behavior.
voit au cœur du système
You see
alimentaire
that
cette
at the heart of
interface
food
qui va nous
system, this
intéresser particulièrement.
interface is going to
Un
be
certain
of
nombre de
higher
politiques
interest.
nutritionnelles qui
A
adressent
number
directement
of
le comportement des
diet
consommateurs
policies
ont montré une
are
difficulté à
focusing
changer
on
des comportements
consumers, and they
simplement par une
showed that
politique
it was
d'information.
hard
Et c'est
to
souvent ce
change
qui est pratiqué.
behaviors
On aime
just
dire aux
by
consommateurs ce qu'ils
informing
devraient
people.
faire, ce qu'ils devraient
Even when
manger.
you tell
Si tu devrais
people what
manger
they should
plus ou
eat,
moins
what
de
they
viande,
should
plus ou moins de fruits et
not
légumes
eat,
ou des aliments,
eat
par
more
exemple,
vegetable,
moins
eat
salés.
less
Faut-il que le
salt.
consommateur sache
These
exactement
are
quels sont les
recommendations,
aliments qui
but
sont salés
consumers also need to
par
know
les gens
what
qu'ils
salt
consomment.
is,
Donc,
what
ça
are
pose un
the
niveau de
salty
compétence et de
products,
connaissance
and
relativement élevé.
this requires a level
De
of
fait,
knowledge that
on
is not
postule ici
necessarily
qu'en changeant
there.
les environnements alimentaires, on va pouvoir
It's
agir
also a
aussi
prerequisite
directement
that
sur
food
l'environnement de
environments
choix des
can
consommateurs
be
et permettre
decided
de
upon
modifier indirectement ces
and
pratiques.
can be changed, and
Diapositive suivante,
through
s'il vous plaît.
food environments you can
C'est le
change
premier choix que je veux
practices.
montrer ici. La première étude que je veux
This
montrer ici,
study I'd like
une
to
étude
show
qui était
you
faite
is
dans
a
un
study that
restaurant
was
universitaire en
conducted in
France.
a
On a
university
simplement
catering in
demandé
France.
au
We
gestionnaire du restaurant
asked
de doubler la
the
disponibilité de
catering
plats
system
végétariens. On a
restaurant
observé
to
que
change
face à
the
cette situation,
availability
les
of dishes,
consommateurs
and we
ont opté pour
saw
2
that
fois plus de choix de
when
plats
there was
végétariens.
more
Donc
choices
simplement en
of
doublant la
veggie
disponibilité de l'offre,
dishes,
on a doublé la disponibilité des choix possibles.
students
Et nous sommes
tended
bien
to
sûr assurés
choose
dans cette
more
expérience
veggie
que les
dishes.
consommateurs
So
avaient tout au long de
availability
l'étude
is a
une
key
offre de choix qui
aspect.
leur permettait de
And the
satisfaire toutes les
study
options qu'ils
showed
voulaient,
that
qu'ils auraient pu choisir.
there were always
Cette étude a été
options, but
réalisée
when there are
sans
more
information,
options
donc
for
simplement
veggie
avec
dishes, it
une
pushes
modification, une
towards more
modulation de
consumption. So it's going
l'environnement
to
de choix des
change.
consommateurs.
This is
La
to show
suivante,
that
s'il vous plaît.
changing consumers'
On va
environment has an
maintenant
impact on the
s'intéresser au
final
chemin
consumption.
d'action des politiques publiques
We're now going to
pour
get
agir sur les
interested in
comportements. La
the
France s'est dotée depuis
push in
2001
public
d'une
policies.
politique
In
d'un programme national
2001,
nutrition
France
santé qui
created a
visait
national
notamment
a
justement à
national
réduire
nutrition
spécifiquement
and
la
health
consommation de
program
ces nutriments
to
qui sont en
fight
présence
the
en quantité
overconsumption
trop
of salt,
importante dans les
sugar, and
régimes,
fat
donc sel, sucre et
in
matières grasses. Pour
basic
cela,
diet.
les politiques ont visé
For this,
l'amélioration de la qualité des produits
public
du marché
policies
en essayant de
targeted
convaincre les
the
industriels à
quality of
reformuler leurs
market
produits.
products. So they worked
Et
with
ça a été il a
food
été nécessaire pour
multinationals, food
suivre
companies to
cette
reduce
efficacité
the
des politiques
content of
publiques, de
salt, sugar,
s'équiper
and fat.
d'un observatoire
And
de la
there
qualité de
was an
l'alimentation
assessment
qui est
to
piloté
assess
conjointement par
the
INRAE
impact
et
of
l'ANSES,
these
qui
public
permet
policies.
d'analyser finement l'évolution de la
It's a
situation
very
nutritionnelle.
fine analysis of
Donc,
the
depuis
nutritional
2008,
impact.
nous avons
Since
différencié ces
8,
qui nous permettent aux
we've
différents secteurs
had
d'évaluer
different
l'évolution du changement
ways
de
to
composition
assess
nutritionnelle.
the
C'est une
change
mode
of
de passer à la suivante.
diet
Qu'est-ce qu'on
composition.
observe sur la base de cet
What we
observatoire?
can
J'ai pris
see
ici
in this
l'exemple des
observation,
conditions des teneurs moyennes en acides gras
this is the
saturés
example
des
of
achats
the
des ménages. Donc là, on
average
parle bien des achats
content
des
in
ménages. On
saturated
voit en bleu,
fats
c'est les effets des
in
reformulations
the
apportées par les
usual
industriels. On le
purchases,
voit, ils sont
food
beaucoup
purchases
ciblés
in
sur la gauche
households.
graphique dans le
You
sens
can
d'une
see on this
amélioration de la
graph the
qualité
different dots.
nutritionnelle.
The
En
more to
violet,
the
on voit
left,
le
the
renouvellement
more
de
the
l'offre
improvement there
qui est
is
à
in
la
the
fois
quality of the
est
product.
partagé entre l'amélioration et la détérioration des indicateurs
But
nutritionnels. Et ce qui
there are
m'intéresse en
also
particulier ici, c'est les
deterioration
points
of
verts, les
nutritional
substitutions par les
criteria,
consommateurs.
and this is
En fait, les
shown to the
consommateurs
right
opèrent des choix.
side
La vie
of
finalement leur
the
permet de
graph. So
satisfaire leurs préférences
consumers
sensorielles,
make
mais en
choices
s'écartant des
to
préconisations nutritionnelles, donc
um,
en allant chercher des
that
variantes
gets
de produits
into
plus
their
riches en acides
preferences,
gras
their
saturés.
visual
Donc, à l'inverse,
preferences, taste
finalement, de la
preferences, and
politique
sometimes it
nutritionnelle.
goes against
Donc
the
ici, c'est l'annoncé
nutritional
qui aurait fait
recommendations.
opter pour essayer d'influencer les préférences des
So
consommateurs,
here,
qui est pas
trying
simple,
to
même par une
push
modification
the
de
to
l'environnement ici qui
change
a
the
été
preferences of consumers is
relativement
not easy. That
couronné de
was the
succès.
conclusion.
On va pouvoir passer aux conclusions.
But the global
Ces quelques
conclusion now
exemples pour vous
is
montrer
that
que les
these
comportements des
examples
consommateurs sont des
show
routines
that
qui ont une
consumer
fonction
behaviors are
psychologique
deeply
importante,
rooted in
sont largement
routines,
ancrés
and
dans les
this has an
environnements
important
alimentaires. Donc,
psychological
agir sur ces
functions.
environnements peut être efficace dans
But
certaines conditions,
acting on food
mais
environments
agir sur les
can be
préférences et les
effective under
motivations
certain
profondes des choix des
conditions,
consommateurs reste un challenge pour la
but
recherche,
it remains
notamment la
the
recherche sur la
choice of
modification des comportements alimentaires.
deep
J'ai repris ici un petit
consumer
schéma
behaviors
théorique
remains a
qui nous vient de nos
challenge.
collègues spécialistes en
If I
psychologie
may
des
use
comportements,
the
notamment des
comparison
comportements en
made
santé,
by
qui montrent différents leviers, les
our colleagues
capacités des consommateurs,
in
leurs
psychology,
opportunités et
they
leurs
compared
motivations
the
qui vont agir
consumer's
sur les
behavior
comportements pour amener à des modifications. Donc il nous reste à comprendre
depending on
comment agir
their
sur ces leviers
capacity, their
spécifiquement
opportunity,
pour entraîner des
and their
comportements qui sont
motivation.
souhaitables
And these
à la
are the
fois pour la
three
santé individuelle et la
levers on
santé
which we
planétaire.
may act
Je
to
vous remercie
change
pour votre
behaviors.
écoute.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Louise, est-ce que nous avons quelques questions moins courtes
Louise,
qu'on avait prévu?
do we have questions? Because we have a
On a
bit of
plusieurs
time
questions, notamment
to
sur les
take
questions
questions.
de sélection
Yes.
variétale pour Carole
Especially on varietal
on
selection
dit
for
la
Carole
sélection
Caranca.
variétale elle est stratégique. Comment faire pour garantir que les paysans et surtout
How do we ensure
puissent
that
garder le contrôle sur
farmers,
leurs
especially in the south, can keep control
Alors,
over
c'est
what they
effectivement
sow?
un sujet clé
Yes,
et
absolutely.
déterminant.
This is a major
Il fait l'objet
issue.
de recherches assez
It has
intensives
been
également,
studied
et il y a plusieurs options
to a
pour
large
garder
extent,
le
and there are
contrôle sur les
several options
semences.
to keep control
C'est
over
utiliser
the
des variétés, enfin,
seeds.
je vais pas toutes les détailler, mais
I will not go
possible
into too
d'utiliser
much
des
detail,
variétés
but
que l'agriculteur peut
it's
reproduire
possible to use
lui-même. Et
varieties
c'est
that
des pratiques assez
the
répandues.
farmers
Ce
can
type de
reproduce themselves.
reproduction de semences par l'agriculteur,
And
alors même si les variétés
even
peuvent, pour
if
certaines espèces, avoir des rendements moindres,
varieties may
ne vont
have
pas
lower
des meilleurs
yields
hybrides que peuvent avoir d'autres
compared
variétés,
to
elles présentent l'avantage
more
d'être
hybrid
très adaptées
varieties.
aux conditions locales de culture.
They
Donc
often
c'est
are
quelque chose
very
d'important
adapted to
qu'il
the local
s'agit
context,
de
and this
préserver, de
is
faire
very
avancer.
important. We
Je
need
pense
to
que
preserve
le
that.
point clé en matière de sélection,
The
c'est de ne
key
pas opposer les types de
solution in
sélection, les
terms of
types de
selection
variétés,
is to
mais de garantir une forme de choix aux
ensure
agriculteurs en fonction des
that
localisations
farmers
rencontrées.
have a choice depending on their context and depending on their constraints. Another question?
Comment est-ce qu'on pourrait
We have
intégrer
a
ensemble les pratiques agroécologiques et les
question
exigences économiques des agriculteurs?
for Mr. Kulnak.
Oui, merci pour cette question, mais c'est effectivement quelque chose
Yes.
de tout à fait central et justement ça ne s'oppose pas et donc
We don't have an
c'est
opposition
ce qui montre un
between
petit peu ma dernière slide, c'est-à-dire que
agroeconomic demands of farmers
cette transition agroécologique, elle doit pas
and
se
the
faire de
agroecological
façon
transition.
imposée aux agriculteurs, mais elle doit être
So
construite avec les
the
agriculteurs de
transition
façon à ce qu'elle satisfaite
should not be
à leurs
imposed,
besoins, leurs
but
exigences, et effectivement, à la fois de rentabilité
should
économique,
be
de satisfaction des
supported,
besoins alimentaires, etc., etc.
and
Donc,
we should try and show farmers that they can benefit from it economically as well.
Les ces changements de comportement seront
this is
profitables aux agriculteurs que s'ils sont
about
co-construits avec les
changing
agriculteurs. C'est cette
behaviors, and
posture-là qui
so
est centrale
this
pour aller dans le sens
change
de l'exigence
management
formulée par cette question.
can only happen if farmers feel included
Sur
and
la question de la
solutions are
communication,
co-constructed.
on me demande
On the
Madame
topic of
Nichols si la
co-construction,
médiation scientifique dans le milieu de l'éducation est un vecteur d'avenir pour
scientific
progressivement orienter les consommateurs vers
mediation
de bonnes qualités de l'alimentation
can be used for
des bonnes habitudes
changing behaviors of consumers. This is a
Alors,
question for Sophie
l'éducation
Nicholas.
alimentaire est certainement un levier à
So,
mobiliser
food
pour
education can
agir notamment
absolutely
sur
be
les
used
capacités des individus et
to
aussi sur les motivations. Bien informés, on peut aussi être
impact
capable de faire des choix,
motivation
des
and
choix
choices.
de
So
plus
when you are
adaptés, Néanmoins,
more
un certain
knowledgeable,
nombre de
you
travaux
can
montrent
make
que
more
ça ne
informed
suffit pas et en
choices, but
particulier, je pense que
education
c'est
in itself
important
is
de
not
lier les
enough.
questions d'éducation alimentaire aux questions de
And
modification de l'environnement.
so it's
Donc, en
important
fait, on peut reposer toute la responsabilité
to combine food
de
education and
la
environment
modification des
education.
comportements sur les épaules des consommateurs, alors qu'ils
Because
sont pris
changing
dans un système
behavior is
alimentaire
not
qui les
only
conditionne d'une certaine
something that
façon relativement
consumers
fortement.
should bear
Donc,
alone,
pour moi,
because
l'éducation alimentaire, c'est
consumers
quelque chose
are
d'important aussi pour expliquer, donner à voir, donner à
under
comprendre les enjeux autour de ces questions.
a lot
Et
of pressure
c'est quelque chose qui doit être fait, qui ne doit pas être restreint non plus
and
aux enfants en
should
particulier.
be
Parce que quand on pense
supported.
éducation alimentaire, on pense souvent aux enfants.
And
On a besoin de
when
s'informer
talking
pour
about
grandir, aussi parce
education,
que nos
we
besoins
think
nutritionnels
mostly
évoluent, nos
about
connaissances
children, or
nutritionnelles évoluent.
foremost
Donc c'est
about
important de
children.
réussir
It's not
à traiter ce sujet sur
just
la durée.
about targeting
Et donc
children,
cette éducation
but
doit
everyone,
toujours
and it has
main
to
dans
be
la main
done
aussi
on
avec
a
une
longer
évolution
term.
des environnements qui facilite aussi les comportements des
And
consommateurs éduqués.
changing the environments in which consumers
Oui, on en a une pour Monsieur
are
Foucault. Vous avez montré
in
que
is
les
important.
algorithmes peuvent aider à
A
anticiper
question
les crises et
on
améliorer les décisions électorales.
intelligence,
Mais il
artificial
faut aussi
intelligence
accroître
for
sa
Mr.
quelle
Fourcault.
garantie mettre en place pour que
What
l'IA ne bénéficie pas uniquement aux
can
exploitants
be
les plus
the
exigeants
safeguards
technologiquement?
to ensure that
Oui, alors bon, c'est
AI
une
does not
question difficile
benefit
parce que je suis pas sûr qu'on soit
just
tous les
to
paramètres. En tout cas,
big
une
tech
des solutions,
companies?
c'est d'avoir des IA
One
accessibles,
solution is to have
qui coûtent pas
AI
cher, qui
that
sont
is
faciles à
affordable,
utiliser,
accessible,
qui soient mises à disposition
open,
des acteurs et des agriculteurs en particulier, et en particulier
and
des agriculteurs du Sud, qui
that
ont
can be
souvent des
used by
difficultés d'accès
farmers, and
au réseau
especially
ou à
farmers
des
from the
technologies
global south,
performantes. Et donc ça, il
because
faut
it's
vraiment
sometimes a
aussi
challenge for
développer des
them to
outils
access
qui vont,
efficient
avant,
technologies.
notamment, on entend parler de l'impact plutôt négatif de ces technologies
Because we
sur l'environnement.
often hear
Voilà,
about
mais
the very
après, je pense que c'est aussi la
negative
mise en place
impacts
de
that those
politiques
technologies have on the
adaptées,
environment.
qui visent à donner un accès
So I
facilité
think
à ces technologies.
access is
D'autant plus
also
que ces
to be
technologies
promoted
vont
through
effectivement
adequate
aider
policies,
toutes
so that it
ces
can
acteurs.
be used for good and as a helping tool for stakeholders. Thank you very much. I hope your questions will also find an answer in the third session. And so, Kenza, can you wrap up this session?
Merci Raoul.
Yes,
Je tiens à remercier
thank you,
tous les
Raoul.
intervenants
I
pour
would like to
leur
thank all
présentation
their
très riche en informations.
all
Et
our
comme vous
speakers
l'avez
for their
pu le
presentations that are
constater,
very
nous avons
enlightening.
voyagé l'une derrière
As
les
you
écrans
may have
à
seen, we
travers
have
des approches
traveled
complémentaires qui ensemble éclairent les chemins possibles
digitally
vers
through
des
various
systèmes alimentaires plus
approaches,
durables, de
through
la sélection variétale
to
face au changement climatique,
more
aux
sustainable food
algorithmes au
systems.
service de
So from
l'agriculture. Nous avons
varietal
aussi vu comment la
selection to
science et les
algorithms,
technologies se rencontrent pour
we also
renforcer la résilience de nos modèles. Nous avons ensuite exploré les
the
leviers de la transition
science
agroécologique entre
is used
défis alimentaires,
to
environnementaux
innovate,
et réalités du terrain. Et enfin, nous avons plongé
and
dans des déterminants de nos comportements
we
alimentaires,
have
sujet essentiel pour
explored
comment
the
accompagner durablement
underlying
ces transformations.
motivations of our
Croisés
dietary
montre bien
habits.
que la transition ne
So
repose
all
pas
those
sur une seule
approaches
solution,
show that transition
mais
is
une
not
convergence d'innovation, de recherche,
just one
d'expérience et
solution, but a
d'engagement politique.
combination of
Je veux remercier
experiences
encore
and
toute votre
commitments, both at
participation.
the scientific
Je
and
remercie
political level.
les
Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for your questions. And let's keep the discussion going and let's preserve our resources together. Have a lovely afternoon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kenza, for your introduction and conclusion. We will now put you to contribution because we will have what we call a systemic pause break. Sorry, that so it's where we ask you to write in the chat in your own language what is your definition of a systemic approach. So you have 1 minute and 30 seconds to write your own definition of a systemic approach in the chat in your own language.
Voilà, Éric Verger, c'est à vous pour la session 3.
Éric Verdier, this is yours for the next session on transforming food systems. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Raoul, for this transition and this short break, preparing our guests to think about this question. My name is Éric Verger, and I have the pleasure of leading this third session, which in a way will question the implementation of these different solutions in the real world. Indeed, food systems involve a multitude of actors with potentially divergent interests and agendas, all of which can potentially hinder the implementation of these solutions. Furthermore, we must not forget that food systems interact and compete with other human systems, such as energy systems, and that the thorny problem of feeding 10 billion people by 2050 is linked to other thorny problems, such as meeting humanity's various social needs while respecting planetary boundaries. Ultimately, I'm simply reiterating, in other words, that the achievement of Agenda 2030 depends essentially on humanity's ability to maximize synergies and resolve the trade-offs that exist between the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. In order to assess the issue of transforming food systems to make them more sustainable, inclusive, and resilient, we propose three different examples, which will gradually take us from the national level to the continental level and the world level. So without further ado, let's begin the journey together with Éric Joël Faufiry and Pierre Janin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your invitation and this collaborative event. Our presentation is entitled Building Food System Transitions, or How to Better Articulate Objectives, Narratives and Action. A narrative is a conceptual journey.
Par ailleurs, si le concept de système alimentaire ouvre à la complexité, celui de transition
food
n'est pas
system is a
immédiatement
complex
compréhensible, même si chacun en convient
aspect,
sur ce plan,
complex
il appelle à une pluralité
approach, but
d'étapes et
transition
d'états de changement.
also. And the idea is to change.
Aujourd'hui, les transitions sont encore souvent présentées et
Today,
portées comme des
transitions
processus de
are
changement
presented
systémique
as
d'innovation
systemic
sociotechnique,
changes
de
that
prescription
are
rituelle qui
social
semblent
technical,
insuffisamment pensés comme des projets de
but
vie
they are
collective
not
et des objets politiques
considered
à traiter comme
as
tels. Un autre point essentiel est de
lifestyle
reconnaître
and
que les
political
approches de
changes.
transition des systèmes alimentaires restent
So
difficiles à manier du fait de
it's
leur complexité nouvelle.
difficult
Rappelez-vous, il y a encore peu de
to
temps, on parlait essentiellement
to
de sécurité
understand
alimentaire
those
nutritionnelle.
systems.
Elles peuvent également être concurrencées par une repolitisation importante
It can be
via
also
l'émergence de la quête de souveraineté. Elles doivent être, pour être réalisables, finement contextualisées,
put in
testées, elles
competition
doivent
with
être mises
other
à l'épreuve et à
issues.
l'échelle,
So
et
what we
diffusées
need to
comme des
do
cadres
is
d'analyse pour l'action.
to
Cette
use
démarche
them
détermine
as
leur
to study
trajectoire
them
de
and use
réalisation
them
dans
as
différentes
frameworks
échéances
for
temporelles,
action.
selon ce qui est acceptable et accepté par la
Trying to
société.
think about what is
Effectivement,
acceptable as a future and as a
au-delà de
society.
ces changements de cadre d'analyse, le champ de la
So,
durabilité est devenu tout
beyond
modifié.
changing the
Et
conceptual
rajouter encore un
framework,
niveau de
we need
complexité, voire même
to
de perplexité pour certains et pour
rethink
certaines.
everything and
Figurez-vous qu'en
add
clair, cette dimension
another
politique,
layer of
bien des
complexity,
incertitudes
let's
pèsent encore
say,
aujourd'hui sur sa mise en pratique de la
because
durabilité à l'échelle des territoires et des sociétés actuelles. Si les trois dimensions retenues, environnementale, nutritionnelle et économique, sont bien cadrées et bien référenciées, un
when we
dernier
talk
point
about
semble, selon nous, avoir été
different
négligé, voire oublié.
dimensions,
La
environmental,
part des
social, and
politiques
economic, we know what we talk about,
pourtant
but
essentielle à la
political
matérialisation et
sustainability is not
l'acceptabilité, je le
taken into
rappelle, d'une
account.
transition durable. Oui, la durabilité convoque fortement la question de la gouvernance et du politique.
And when talking about
Avançons un peu dans
sustainability,
leur
of course, we talk about
De manière plus concrète, les systèmes
governance.
alimentaires sont effectivement organisés autour de stocks de ressources
Food systems are
précis
organized
pour répondre
around
à des besoins fluctuants en
resource
termes de demande
stocks
alimentaire. Mais
that are
ces
used
jalons,
to
j'en vois un
meet
peu, figurés en bleu,
food demands.
subissent également certains événements conjoncturels ou
And they are
contextuels que j'appellerais des
influenced
perturbateurs qui viennent
by what
plus ou
I
moins
call
fortement
disruptors
perturber leur fonctionnalité et leur efficience.
that are
Enfin, au-delà, on peut
that
avancer
are
sur le
affecting
et
efficiency
enfin, au-delà, de
and
manière sous-jacente et implicite,
accessibility.
les comportements individuels et collectifs
And
forgés par un ensemble de valeurs,
individual and collective
logiques, de
behaviors
représentation qui
around
viennent
collective
organiser les
values
systèmes
or
alimentaires et la
representations
durabilité
are
quand les
also
rapports
impacting
d'intérêt et les jeux de
food
pouvoir ne les
systems.
réorientent pas également ou les perturbent plus fondamentalement.
They can also be disrupted or reoriented by power plays.
Je dirais donc, d'un point de
Thank
vue
you,
conceptuel,
Pierre. So
la
from a
transition des systèmes alimentaires
conceptual point
peuvent
of
donc
view,
s'apparenter à une trajectoire
we can talk about what
construire,
we call dilemma
auquel on divise une
pathways.
cohorte d'objectifs. On avance sur la diapo, s'il vous plaît. Les trois.
So taking
Troisième point. Merci beaucoup.
objectives into account,
Donc,
moving on
nous
with the
réalisons une
slides. Thank
cohorte
you.
d'objectifs, de narratifs et d'actions.
So taking into
Essayons de
account
proposer
objectives,
donc,
narratives, and actions.
par exemple, la pluralité de ces objectifs en termes de
So the wide
d'élimination de
range
la
of
faim,
goals, for
préservation de
example,
l'environnement,
zero hunger or
de garantir la souveraineté
environment
alimentaire et
protection, food
construction des
sovereignty,
chaînes de valeur. De la même manière, dans ce concept
supporting value
également de
chains as
conception des
well.
narratifs,
Those are
on verra
a wide range of
promotion des
objectives.
expériences, la patrimonialisation, la
We also have
territorialisation,
narratives
lesquelles
promoting
procèdent également des
experience,
actions qui se traduisent
fostering heritage
à
making,
travers la gouvernance, les multi-échelles, la
and we
temporalité.
have actions
Et tout cela
promoting
conduit vers
multi-scale
la question du
governance
dilemme. Diapo suivante, s'il vous plaît.
with
Donc,
different
on dira
timings
que
and
ces trois
dilemmas.
piliers doivent être
So
pensés
those
en
three
fonction des sociétés et des territoires,
pillars must be
selon donc leur continuum,
must
reliés les uns
be
aux autres,
understood
pour voir,
as part of a
pour
local
éviter les
dynamic
discordances, les incohérences et pour minimiser les résistances et les blocages qui
to
sont soumis aux résultats.
mitigate
Et donc, de fait,
obstacles
le
and
dilemme seront à
frictions.
trancher tout au long du déroulé
So
temporel des prises de décision, des engagements.
while
avancer dans la
implementing
construction
our
de transition des
solutions
systèmes
and
alimentaires
taking
plus de
action, we
durabilité.
are actively solving
Donc cette
dilemmas.
trajectoire est également à incarner du point de vue des écosystèmes d'acteurs qui sont
It's
impliqués.
also important
Ça peut être
to
des
think those
institutions, des entreprises,
pathways
des
and
communautés,
trajectory in terms of
prenant en compte la
dynamics
mobilité des apports, mais aussi des
among different
aspirations, des
stakeholders,
intérêts
take into account
concurrentiels complémentaires
their
de
motivations
pouvoir constituer. Et donc, en termes
and
d'exemple, on verra
power
qu'au niveau du
capacities.
Cameroun,
So
cela
we can
s'illustre
see in
parfaitement
Cameroon
à travers
a
donc un certain
perfect
nombre de
example
difficultés.
of that.
En prenant l'exemple de
Cameroon
la question agricole,
faces a
qui est
number
un
of
des leviers
challenges
essentiels
in
de
the farming
transition du système
sector.
alimentaire. On
Farming
met donc
being one
en
main
concurrence
level of
aussi,
transformation
du
of
point de vue des objectifs, la
agricultural systems.
nécessité de s'engager soit vers le modèle agroécologique et qui est structuré et donc autour de, dans le contexte
The
camerounais,
agroecological model
par
is
les
structured
restrictions en termes de cadre de
around
rendement
several
inférieur à
dimensions
30 à 40% par rapport à l'agriculture conventionnelle,
with
en termes
with lower
également
yield of
de
30 to
restrictions
40%
d'accès
lower
aux
than conventional farming,
pesticides, mais aussi en
reduced
appui à
access to
l'écologisation
pesticides
de la
or
veille biologique
shift to
dans les
biopesticides.
écosystèmes secs principalement versus des écosystèmes humides plus contraignants en
Agroecology
termes de mise en œuvre.
is
Mais également un aspect important,
oriented toward
c'est
a
la
dry
polarisation sur
ecosystem
le vivrier
versus
versus
wet
donc
ecosystems.
agriculture
That makes it
terrestre.
more
Et donc du
challenging.
coup, il y a donc ce dilemme pour les pouvoirs publics
And so
à choisir entre le modèle
the government
agroécologique d'une part
has a
et
dilemma
le modèle
between
d'agriculture conventionnelle qui
adopting an
garantit
agroecological
encore
approach or
sur le moyen long terme
continuing with the conventional
une
farming,
certaine productivité et qui
ensuring
bénéficie d'un soutien des
on the
politiques publiques. Alors,
medium
l'adoption de ce modèle
term
agricole interroge par conséquent sa capacité à répondre aux défis
a
alimentaires
sustained
et
yield
donc à
and
soutenir
productivity.
la croissance dans une économie comme celle du Cameroun, encore fortement dominée par le secteur agricole.
The
Dans ce
Cameroun
cas
economy is
d'illustration
still
que vous avez,
relying
peut être
heavily on the
étendu à
farming
plusieurs
sector.
situations à dilemme, notamment les changements climatiques, on en parle depuis le début,
An
mais
additional
également
dilemma is
la définition
climate
des outils
change, of
d'évaluation des
course,
progrès des systèmes alimentaires,
and
parmi lesquels les indicateurs de performance.
building
Et donc, je
also
laisse la parole à
adequate
Pierre pour conclure
indicator
cette présentation.
Merci
for
Eric.
evaluating
Président, pour conclure
performance.
donc, s'appuyant sur notre
And
expérience la plus récente au
Pierre
Cameroun et
will
en Côte
conclude.
d'Ivoire, mais également
Yes.
notre regard citoyen, ne l'oublions pas,
So,
plusieurs enseignements
based
pour
on
espérer une
the
trajectoire
Cameroon
crédible,
example, but
réaliste et
also our own
acceptable
experience as
de
citizens,
transition des systèmes alimentaires émergent. Ils peuvent être regroupés autour de trois pôles. Le
we
premier,
have
c'est la
three
question des narratifs et des imaginaires,
pillars
avec deux
around
propositions, deux
agroecology.
points importants.
So,
Redonner individuellement à l'alimentation sa
narratives
vraie valeur patrimoniale et
to
sociétale et sortir de la course
to
au prix le plus bas
reinstate
possible.
the
Deuxième élément,
heritage
c'est
value
reconnaître
of
l'importance des
food.
communs agricoles et alimentaires
It's
pour un
also
meilleur
important
partage et une
to
meilleure durabilité. Le
recognize
deuxième élément
food as a
porte sur les
commons.
acteurs des transitions, dimension essentielle, avec l'idée de favoriser
A
l'échelle
second
locale comme
aspect
laboratoire
is on
expérimental pour une gouvernance
actors
collaborative,
as
et aussi d'ailleurs dans certains
and local
territoires, avec des exemples
stakeholders.
probants, s'appuyer plus avant sur les pépinières d'entreprises qui se consacrent aux transitions durables et faire émerger dans les jeunes générations une appétence
Urban
scientifique pour les
fabric
transitions et la
organizations
durabilité.
that are
Et dernier levier en
essential
matière de
to
pratique,
promote
confirmer les
transition.
tentatives de gouvernance
And
collaborative, cela me
third,
semble essentiel. Renforcer la
collaborative
transparence, qui est une des vertus
practices
cardinales qui a été un peu oubliée pour de la confiance
for
partagée,
shared
qui est souvent
governance.
mise à mal à l'heure actuelle. C'est une base essentielle pour, selon moi,
Trust is
une
an
meilleure
essential
acceptabilité de ces changements inévitables
foundation
à mettre en place.
to
Et
ensure
enfin,
acceptability of the
travailler
changes
à la recherche
needed.
de compromis en lieu et place d'arrangements qui sont souvent imposés
And
par
finally, we
hiérarchie des
should seek
pouvoirs et un rapport
compromises
économique.
rather than
Je vous remercie.
patched up agreements, especially with governments. Thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup Eric et Pierre pour
Thank
cette
you
très
very
belle
much, Eric
présentation.
and Pierre, for this
Et je vous
very
propose de
interesting
continuer notre
presentation.
route
And
sur ce
I
chemin
suggest
épineux
we
de transformer
continue with
durablement nos
this
systèmes
thorny
alimentaires avec
pathway
Marie-Phil
of
et
transforming
Joseph
our food
Bassam.
systems with Marie Schill and Joseph Bassama.
Alors, c'est Joseph, en principe, qui démarre. Joseph, tu es avec
Joseph
nous?
will be starting. Are you with us, Joseph?
Bonjour tout le
Yes.
monde. Et
Good
merci
afternoon,
de
everybody.
l'occasion
Thank you
qui
for
m'est
this
donnée
introduction,
de
and thank you for
participer
giving me the
à
opportunity
cette fête de la science. Diapo
uh,
suivante.
to participate in this
Donc, je vais
festival.
commencer par poser
I
le
will
contexte
start
de l'initiative
giving you
Cirad
a
qui
few
nous
elements of
réunit,
context
nous
of
et
this
d'autres.
SARA initiative that
Pourquoi
brings us
Cirad?
together. Why SARA?
La question, elle revient à poser une question qui est un
This
peu
is a
plus
question
débattue en ce moment. C'est
that
est-ce que
is
le
quite debatable.
21e siècle sera le siècle de l'Afrique?
Will the 21st century be
Je dirais oui, mais la question sous-jacente, c'est l'Afrique sera-t-elle une
pushed by
solution ou bien
demographics?
un problème pour le
Will
21e siècle?
Africa be
On
a
a parlé
solution
des
of a problem
problèmes
for the 21st
démographiques,
century?
on a
We
parlé de
spoke of
réchauffement
demographics,
climatique
we spoke of climate
qui se
change.
voit de façon claire et qui
That
entraîne
is
des
very
phénomènes
clearly
qui nous touchent de nous
experienced in
tous,
the
les
field.
phénomènes de
It
migration, mais
impacts us
aussi
every day.
l'accès
It
aux ressources qui
generates
fragilise les équilibres de pouvoir qu'on a
migrations. It
hérités de la Seconde Guerre
fragilizes
mondiale
our
et qui fait que
ecosystems, and
l'avenir est de
everything
plus en
that
plus
was
flou.
put after the
Donc nourrir le
Second
monde en
World War is now
2050 en
imbalanced, and
préservant la
the
planète, c'est
future
bien sûr
seems
l'enjeu
crazy.
central, mais qui doit se traduire, ça a été dit
So,
précédemment, et je suis content d'abonder dans ce sens, par une
and I'm
vision
happy with what
politique
I heard
et une
before.
vision politique
The
endogène qui
vision we have needs to be
n'opposera pas
translated
des
into a
concepts de
political
sécurité
vision that will
alimentaire,
not
de souveraineté
oppose
alimentaire, mais
food
aussi
safety and food sovereignty,
d'autosuffisance alimentaire, parce
and
que ce
also
terme aussi
food
revient de plus en plus.
self-sufficiency, which
Donc
is
on
a
doit
very
transformer
important
les systèmes
keyword, and
alimentaires,
this
c'est un
should
challenge,
not be
et
opposed
ça doit d'abord
to
passer
economy.
par construire de la connaissance
And this
en
starts
s'attaquant
with
d'abord à la
building
caractérisation
knowledge
des systèmes
and
alimentaires africains. Si on ne
better
caractérise pas,
understanding
trop
food
peu de
systems, especially
caractérisation
in
ne nous
Africa. If
permettra
we
pas
don't
de proposer des
understand them
solutions
through a
idoines qui nous
proper
permettent d'amener,
characterization, we
à mon
won't find the
sens,
right
plus de
solutions.
performance.
We
Performance
won't
qui n'est
be
pas un
more
gros mot
efficient.
dans ma bouche, c'est plutôt faire plus
Efficiency
avec
is
moins,
not a
tout
word
en
I
répondant à un triptyque qui
truly
sera
love,
durabilité
but
économique, sociale et écologique. Donc, il faut des
I like
synergies
the word
d'acteurs, qu'ils
sustainability
soient
more.
sud-sud ou nord-sud,
There needs
transdisciplinaires,
to be more
complémentaires. On doit être
interactions
capable de
between the
travailler en
countries,
interface,
North countries, South
d'identifier et
countries, all
caractériser les nexus
countries.
des
We need to
systèmes
identify
et
nexus in the
surtout,
systems, and
former les
overall,
prochains
we
acteurs de
need
la
to
transformation des systèmes
train the
alimentaires en
future
Afrique. Donc,
stakeholders of
on doit
food
construire des
transformation
partenariats
in
qui soient
Africa.
plus
And we need to
équilibrés, plus
build
respectueux pour mettre
more
en œuvre,
balanced and more
en
respectful
branle toutes ces
partnerships
réponses que nous voulons amener.
to
Diapo
bring
suivante.
the
Donc,
solutions that
Sarah
we
Serra,
need.
un partenariat
SARA
avec
is a
36 membres,
partnership
2
between
continents, 17 pays,
36 members,
qui
two
est qui
continents,
met en avant la
36,
diversité, le lien
17 countries, sorry.
historique entre la France et l'Afrique,
There's a
et par
historic
extension entre l'Union européenne et
relationship between
l'Afrique, et
France
aussi qui montre la diversité de cette Afrique, ce grand
and
continent,
other
ce grand
countries in
continent,
Africa, and
diversité de
this
problématiques d'acteurs, mais
SARA
aussi
initiative shows
diversité
the
de
diversity
solutions.
of the
Je passe la
African
parole
continent,
à
and that also
Marie.
it translates into
Merci
the
Joseph. Bonjour à
diversity of
tous.
solutions.
Diapo suivante,
Thank
s'il
you,
vous plaît.
Joseph,
Donc on a vu
and
que
hi
Sarah,
everybody. We saw why
comment par le
SARA.
partenariat, Sarah
We
par
also
la
why
recherche, en
how.
s'appuyant notamment sur
So SARA
l'émergence de pôles
is based on
thématiques qui soient à la fois
research and on
fédérateurs et
the
opérationnels et
creation
transverses,
of
qui sont un
research
continuum entre des
units
thématiques dans
that are a
l'agenda scientifique de Sarah
continuation
et il y en a 9.
between
Ici,
different
on compte ces thématiques et on
topics
les a
of
associées
research.
à l'action
We have
concrète,
a
l'action de
cross-cutting
projet par les
approach to
partenaires et tous
implement
les autres qui
concretely
peuvent aller
these
jusqu'à un
thematics
échelon
in
de
the field, and it
diplomatie
can go
scientifique, d'intervention
to
dans des
a form of
enceintes au
scientific
niveau
diplomacy
potentiellement
in at
international.
institutional and
Aujourd'hui, au sein de
international
Sarah,
level.
nous comptons plus de
In
70
SARA, we
projets
have more than
de
70
natures
projects
différentes, de
that can be of
thèses,
very
webinaires,
different natures.
séminaires,
It can be a
projets
PhD thesis,
d'ampleur
a
variable également,
webinar, a
avec
seminar,
des
very
approches
different
variées,
approaches.
très diversifiées, et une prégnance notamment des questions de
And we
modélisation des
especially
génétiques,
have
comme nous en avons
questions
entendu
on
parler auparavant.
genetics
Et je
modeling.
dirais que
We've heard about
l'agroécologie
it.
reste
And the
un
fact that
chapeau
agroecology
à
remains
l'ensemble,
a
à la pousse des
cross-cutting
projets menés.
solution,
Suivante, s'il vous
and
plaît.
it's
Quelques
a
exemples de
common
ces pôles
aspect of all the
thématiques
projects
fédérateurs et
we have.
opérationnels. Un premier
In
autour des
SARA,
questions essentielles eu égard à l'enjeu
we are based on the
du
essential
travail et de
questions such
l'emploi.
as demographics
Le
and
travail décent,
work
et
and
notamment, je
employment,
signalerai une
especially
conférence qui s'est
decent
tenue
work,
à Dakar en
are
janvier dernier,
keywords.
qui a fait
And I'd
l'objet
like
d'une
to
attention soutenue
mention the very
des
important
auditeurs et
international
des
conference that was
autorités
held in
sénégalaises.
Dakar
Et
at
la
the beginning of the
conclusion a
year,
été de dire qu'il fallait
where
vraiment soutenir la
we
production
said
de
that
données
we
sur
need
le
to
travail et
support
l'emploi,
the production of data on job and employment to feed policies that will really create decent and attractive jobs in agriculture. The other part is food systems that can be split into two main pillars, nutrition and transformation. There's the Pharma project, food and microbiota in Africa, but also other projects are about fermented fishing products, the production of legumes and groundnuts, local agriculture is also very important. The production of infant flowers and of milk as the development for economy. And I will also take the example of agri-cold, which is a low-cost approach to cold. And it's a lot of interconnections between very different subjects. There's also a lot of projects that are connected to One Health, so the health of territories, but also of animals and insects and plants, and to find alternatives to pesticides and protect pollinators. I'll take the example of a project that take bees as a protector of agriculture. And we can also work on epidemiologics and phenotype selection. I can also cite a very interesting series of webinars on local races and resilience in livestock. And there will be a webinar next month on the community-based selection programs, so CBBPs, for breeding, and it's also a multi-stakeholder approach. The other subjects are connected to water in terms of quantity, of quality, the questions of catchments, water catchments, and also the digital tools. And all these subjects can be connected in a nexus. And the last slide about how CEST is implemented. So we've seen that it's a great number of projects. So the idea of CEST is to pull all these different projects together in one place to foster dialogue at different scales, in different formats. For example, a seminar between different thematic task forces that was organized in Morocco in last December. There were also the CEST Science Days that were organized, that will be organized in January 2026, and a General Assembly, the CEST General Assembly, which is more institutional and will be organized in Nairobi in May 2026. And I will give the floor back to my colleague for conclusions. CEST needs to be a platform and a catalyzer to integrate all the different projects, but at the heart of this platform is the human being, because everything is based on men and women who are committed to innovations and a sustainable development. So we are here to connect all these peoples, especially in a moment where people cannot find proper information. They need to be able to be sure of their information and to capitalize on serious experience. CEST is aiming, as the Senghor poet said, it's aiming at building knowledge where each person can participate in building the solutions for the world. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Marie, for this beautiful and a very diverse presentation. I suggest we close this third session with Fabrice de Klerk.
Thank you, Eric. So I hope you can see me. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you today for this International Science Festival. It has been a major week for science with the launch of a week around science with the presence of the Minister Laure Carrois. So as a Belgian citizen that lived in the US, I can say that Wallonie has a rooster as a symbol, and I'm happy to share that symbol with France. And the rooster has this particularity of singing when it is the most dark at night, pointing to the west and waiting for the dawn to arrive. So the rooster can be a symbol for hope and light. So to talk to you about the integration between feed, care, and protect. University studies have shown the interactions between those three dimensions. And this major landmark study has been republished a month ago by Stockholm. So showing that healthy diet and composing your plate with at least half of fruits and vegetables, and the second half with a variety of other food products is very important for your health. We also studied the planetary boundaries. There are 9 planetary boundaries, and it has been announced recently that the acidification of oceans has been reached, and we've gone beyond the planetary boundary. And the third element about protecting social foundation is also an interesting topic for research. Next slide. This Oreo biscuit is not healthy per se, but it raises the question of how can science decide what is a healthy diet?
La partie qui représente vraiment un espace d'interaction entre science et société, qui représente la prise de
and it can be also used as a metaphor for the interaction between science and society, and the soft part in the middle is the interaction that takes place. Next slide.
Donc, pour répondre à une des questions que le père
So,
Raoul nous a posées, comment
to answer one of Raoul's father's question, how have food issues changed?
certains rapports qui proposent que nous devrions
Through
augmenter cette productivité
increased productivity. And some reports say that we would need to raise food production by some 70% to feed the world population in 2050. So the question is the figure important in the search for sustainability? Next slide. When you look at the main causes for precocious mortality is number one, a high sodium-based diet, a diet that is low in whole grains, And after that, fruits, seeds, vegetable, omega-3 fatty acid, etc., etc. So basically, the low diversity of diet is the main contributing factor to mortality rate. What does it mean for agriculture? Is that we need to reflect on what to produce and not just how to produce it. The AGR at the top here is the increase of agricultural production. So you can see that all food products are increasing. LSP is livestock. DRY is a dairy product. There's also rice, wheat, and grains. So in the business as usual model, every food product production is increasing. And in a world where we want to ensure a sustainable diet for everyone, we can see that the increase in production should not be 70%, but just 8%. So we need to reflect on what type of products we want to focus on, because you can see here that there's minus 33% for meat production, etc. And we have a 63% increase in vegetables, or 46% in fish production. So by recognizing the role of agriculture in feeding the world, but also feeding it in a sustainable and healthy way, diversity is very important. I can see Raoul asking me to speed up, so to answer Raoul's father's question, how do we pursue both goals at the same time? If you just feed the world, you have the orange part of the figure with an increase of 33% in GHG emissions, 41% in nitrogen use, etc. 9,7 milliards avec 7% moins de surface cultivée. But if we opt for sustainable agricultural practices, we can reach increased productivity and feed 9.7 billion people in 2050 by using less resources. Et donc, pour moi, la dernière question, c'est justement ça qu'on se pose la question avec le projet Nexus Action. To me, the last question we can ask, and this is something I've been studying, is how can we increase the effectiveness of the science, policy, and society interface? Avec les acteurs de première ligne, les producteurs. And so we need to work with the frontline actors, farmers, but also intermediaries such as the supermarkets and also the final consumer. To ask them how they understand the challenges linked to food and agriculture, asking them how they want to be part of the solution, how they want to transform the world. And as researchers, we need to adapt our positioning to better contribute and support frontline action. And by involving people and asking them the 10 most important actions they want to take to transform systems into more sustainable farming practices.
vers les systèmes unitaires que nous cherchons. Merci pour votre temps.
They have answered, and we will put the link in the chat. Thank you very much. Thank you, and we will take just one question for this Q&A session, but let us make a quick detour in Ethiopia at Addis Abeba with a short video.
Sustainable food systems can advance all 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and transformation is underway.
Welcome to Ethiopia, where the story of humanity began, the birthplace of coffee, a land of rich heritage and boundless potential. It is with great honor that we co-host the second UN Food System Summit in partnership with Italy.
Food is a right, a cultural expression, the pillar of a nation's identity and sovereignty. But it is also the first step towards being truly free, independent, and masters of our own destiny.
Governments are leading the way, integrating food systems into climate strategies, biodiversity frameworks, and national budgets. Empowering women and youth, scaling up nutritious school meals, and investing in agroecology. But governments cannot do it alone. The private sector must play a vital role, from innovation and logistics to finance and investments. The future of food is the future of humanity. Let us work together to build food systems that nourish every person, restore our planet, and grow prosperity from the ground up.
Merci à l'Éthiopie, là où tout a commencé. Eric, une minute, une question.
Thank you, Ethiopia, where everything began. There's one question. Louise, do we have one question? Yes. The Cirad program insists on construction and reciprocity in food programs. How can we guarantee that African and European programs are really balanced between producers on the one side and consumers on the other side? I think it's can be a very interesting question for Joseph and Marie. Joseph, Marie, it's all yours. Yes, if we can have a few words each, it would be great.
Excusez-moi, j'ai pas entendu la question.
Pas de souci. La question c'était, votre programme il insiste sur la co-construction et la réciprocité.
Marie's repeating the question. Louise is repeating the question to Joseph. So how can we guarantee that partnerships within African and European stakeholders are symmetrical and balanced? Well, guaranteeing this balance is based on two aspects. European is not at the heart of the problem. For me, we cannot have reciprocity if we, as African researchers, are not in an institutional approach to advocate towards our leaders locally, because this is the real problem in Africa. I am an African researcher, and I am suffering from these balances, these imbalances, because I don't get the support from my own government. And so I want to repeat that, because I want people to hear that reciprocity cannot be built without African governance. And that was my position, and I wanted to speak up, because in many discussions, we don't really hear that position. And as a complement, if I may, I would say that we are very transparent about Zara. It's important to be transparent, to build these equitable partnerships and to have clear responsibilities. So at our level, this is really how we translate our commitment, and we try to do so at our scale to really have reciprocity in the governance, with two-headed governance, with a European, well, a French president and an African president on the other side. And on each thematic, they are shared globally. So they have to be reciprocal and to learn from one another. But this requires efforts and requires to change habits. Thank you for this question. Thank you all. Thank you, Eric, for facilitating this session. We are now going to move on to the very last session after a short music break. My colleagues are going to take these few minutes to keep all your questions, and we'll try to answer these questions during the Q&A session or afterwards in one way or another. So now a short music break so that we can refresh our brains before we hand over to our executive directors.
Le jour se lève sur nos erreurs, mais aussi sur nos espoirs. L'avenir nous appartient, tu sais ça. Tout ira bien si l'on se bat. Ensemble, tout est possible tant qu'on y croit. Il faudra semer demain sans brûler la terre sous nos mains. Partager l'eau, planter la paix et redonner plus qu'on prenait. Regarder loin, penser ensemble, réparer ce qui nous rassemble. Tout ira bien si l'on apprend à vivre mieux simplement.
Merci beaucoup aux musiciens.
Thank you very much to our musicians. We are moving on to our fourth session on prospects. And this will give us another step back to have a better understanding of this global context of sustainable development, and also to launch in the field very concretely with how our food is produced. I had a question for our three executive directors and presidents, and I wanted them to react to what they heard, to focus on what seemed essential, give precisions on some things they would like to give precision to, or maybe share their lights. Everything is possible in this kind of festivity, of this Festival of Science, because we make efforts to have a scientific approach, to have a systemic reflection and find solutions wherever, and to find solutions to global challenge. We'll start with Stefanos Poitou, who's the director of UNFFS for the Coordination Hub on Food Systems. And This is, well, Stefanos is an exception in our series because he will speak in English and be translated into French. Stefanos, the floor is yours.
Raoul, merci beaucoup de m'avoir invité.
Thank you, Raoul, for inviting me. I really appreciated all the discussions that I heard. I'm so sorry I have to switch to English now.
So thank you for finishing the previous session along with the video of what happened in Addis Ababa. In 3 minutes, we got a little bit of the spirit of the Addis Ababa dialogue. And I want to highlight that the UN Food System Summit in Addis Ababa was an extremely important thing that happened in Africa. As you know, the Food System Summit took place in New York, the first stocktake in Rome, so in headquarters of the UN system. But the fact that now the event moved to Africa was a great signal. And I think that the global food system really showcased that Africa was not just a location for a global meeting, but Africa led the conversation. And I must say here that we have received immense positive impacts from a number of partners that they saw that this meeting moved outside the headquarters. So what we saw in Addis Ababa and how this relates to different things that we listen here. So first of all, we saw that there's a very big call for continuing to focus in the agenda of the food systems in different aspects, not only on food-related aid, which is declining, but also on this process of transformation that has started at least, I would say, 4 years or even more ago. So there's a very big need for the development and the humanitarian sector to come together and continue this work. Second, the Food System Summit really showcased that the national food system pathways, they have started delivering some tangible results. It's difficult to see impact at the level of issues like nutrition, management of natural resources, climate, water. These impacts might take 1 or 2 generations to be visible, but it was very clear that we saw impact at the, we saw progress at the level of output. And we have seen that it is the basis of the success is on public and private investments. So countries that they have managed to mobilize resources are the ones that they succeed with the implementation. And this has been supported a lot by the UN through the donorship of major country donors from development banks and from philanthropic foundations. And it is very important to highlight that something that we hear in Addis Ababa is that this funding needs to back smallholder farmers, food workers, and local food economies. I hear today in one intervention the idea of the social equity. So, and I must say that we linked also the UN Food System Summit stocktake with the Global Summit on Social Development that happened in Qatar a couple of weeks ago, and we saw the importance of food systems for the social development agenda. A fourth issue is that really the items of science, new technologies, artificial intelligence were really highlighted there. And they were highlighted very much also in the report, in the call for action of the Secretary General. So we listened today a lot of examples on how research is helping the promotion of the agri-food systems transformation agenda. And we listened in Addis that we need science and innovation to be prerequisite for food system transformation and not coming after. So there is a call for very strong science, policy, society interfaces. Here we need to mention that there's various initiatives like the Montpellier process that is trying to bring these initiatives together. In the hub, we have also an initiative on youth leadership and science policy society interfaces. Also, there was a call that new technologies are available. They are changing their economies and the societies, but really the road ahead demands that wherever the appropriate and responsible use of technology for each different country. We cannot say that one recipe will serve all countries. And of course, we need to invest in digital public infrastructure to connect farmers, producers, markets, and decrease the cost of the food value chain and increase the benefits for the small farmers. Another important element that it is highlighted also in the call for action of the Secretary General is the intergenerational collaboration and the need for the youth not to be only the future beneficiaries, but to be active leaders on the transformation and on the efforts that we are doing today. So the young people are organizing, are farming, are creating food enterprises, are shaping policy debates, and demand space to lead. And this space has been given to them. And we had, for first time, all youth networks that they are dealing with issues of climate, of food, of biodiversity come together and produce the UNFSS plus 4 youth declaration that developed through months of consultation and adopted at the summit. So let me try to summarize by saying that it is very important for science and innovation and technology to follow up on the needs of the countries. So we listen many times that the language of science could be a little bit hard for policymakers, or could be, or it needs to be adapted to the needs of the practitioners. And this is why in the Hub we try to promote what I will say the popularization of science for the food system transformation leaders at the country level, being at governments or being at non-state actors or being the farmers. We do have, as you know, a scientific advisory committee that it doesn't work on creating new science, but it's working on trying to find out how the scientific results of the works of many organizations, including Cirad, INRAE, and IRD, will be able to help the conveners to accelerate their food systems pathway. So a very big willingness from our side to continue cooperation with all scientific institutions, with all the platforms. There is a proliferation of different platforms, but I think when it comes to science, no one is enough alone, but all of us, we can do a very big impact and support the countries. So thank you very much. Over back to you, Raoul.
Un très grand merci, Monsieur Fautiou. Et sans transition,
thank you very much, Mr. Fautiou. And without a transition, I will hand over to Philippe Mauguin, who is the CEO of INRAE. He will speak of science and innovation, and he'll also mention the anniversaries of FAO. Mr. Mauguin, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear Mr. Ambassador, dear Raoul, dear colleagues, and dear partners, I am delighted to be part of this last session of the International Science Festival for 2025. We are asked to talk about prospects. Prospect for overcoming hunger and more generally implementing sustainable development. So today, the presentations that were made by our fellow scientists in a very clear and concise manner have enabled us to address the major, complex and burning issue of how to provide healthy food to the world's population in 2050 while preserving and respecting planetary boundary and preserving natural resources. And it is unfortunately no surprise. We have seen that the various stakeholders, governments, and others have not made sufficient progress to meet the challenges of the 2030 agenda, and particularly that of the zero hunger. This is unsatisfactory, even worrying, given that demographic growth is still ongoing. And so this reinforces the challenge that we face. We will not succeed in the transition to sustainable agricultural system if we do not succeed in transitioning to healthy food systems. So we are facing a quantitative challenge, but also a qualitative one. Obesity, as shown by UNICEF earlier this year, so obesity weighs as heavily on our collective health than undernourishment. So those are worrying observations. But there are solutions, as we heard today from all scientists and researchers who spoke, through plant selection, artificial intelligence, algorithm, and knowledge on food systems. So this fundamental but also solution-oriented research is essential. And we need to scale solutions. So we agree on the Sustainable Development Goals. We have solutions that are coming through research that are co-constructed with economic actors, but we are not at a sufficient scale to tackle the challenge we face. I do not have the magic solution to progress in solving this paradox. But I will highlight three challenges. The first one is strengthening the dialogue between science and public policy. Despite global summit and despite the summit in Addis Ababa on food systems, despite the COP13 Belém that just ended in a very challenging context, the results are limited and even disappointing. It's really difficult to convince all countries to come on board. So we must make more effort in engaging everyone. Talking about planetary boundaries or physical limits is not enough if we don't take into account economic and social aspects as well. So this is the first challenge, strengthening the involvement of science in the public policy dialogue, preferably at the world scale and in on the international scene. The second challenge is something I'm deeply convinced of, is that we need to reinforce co-construction and engaging stakeholders that are acting locally. This is essential if we want to really solve the major issues we face. So we need to co-construct with farmers, both men and women, food industry players and distributors, but also local authorities, non-profits, and citizen organizations. We need to work with all those stakeholders to show that economic performance can be combined with sustainability and environment protection. The third major challenge for me is that we are working in our scientific communities. We are very committed. There's a lot of funding at the national level or the European level, for example, as we are integrated in Europe. But we need to strengthen international cooperation. Some issues are global in nature and need to be addressed globally. For example, if we want to mitigate the risk of pandemics happening or zoonoses, we need to work with the global scientific community. It's true for human health, but also for crops. You may know that the more and more pests are spreading and affecting crops. This is enabled also by climate change. And we can see that in Africa, happening in Africa today and tomorrow in Europe. So we need a strong international cooperation at the scientific level. And we need to call upon the World Bank and other donors to fund that cooperation. Research needs funds as well as farmers and frontline stakeholders. And building on those three challenges, I want to highlight an approach that is very interesting for INRI, but not only. It's microbiome and the One Health approach to foster sustainable food systems. We know that microbiomes and microbiomes are essential for soil health, animal health, for decreased antibiotics resistance. And so this is very important to raise awareness around microbiotics for decision makers. A summit will be held on the 7th of April 2026 in Lyon. This has been announced by the French president to talk about global health, and this will be an essential topic to discuss if we want to achieve our sustainable development goals. And so before concluding, I would like to say that never before have we needed science so badly to better observe, understand, propose, decide, and act. Because Earth is our home, and this is the only home we have. So we need an ethical and responsible science. Of course, in itself, it does not have the power to meet the challenges we face, but it contributes to designing and planning our futures. And this International Science Festival allows us to celebrate and pay tribute to science as it deserves. So my warmest thanks to all the speakers and to the teams involved at the Embassy, IRD, Cirad, CNES and INRAE for their collaboration in this highly successful festival. Best wishes for the 80th anniversary of the FAO and United Nations. We need the United Nations to continue in the face of global challenges. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mauguin. And we now welcome Valérie Verdier from IRD. She will talk about how she sees the world in 2050, and she will have the last words for this International Science Festival. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raoul. Thank you, Philippe. Thank you, Stéphanos, for your words and for your prospects that you take out from this science festival. You already said much, so it's going to be hard for me to add much. But the first thing is that I took a lot of pleasure being with you for this fifth edition dedicated to a very important question for science and politics. And that was really also at the heart of COP30 and all future COPs on biodiversity, climate COP, because feeding the world in 2050 while preserving the planet is also related to the habitability of our planet, simply put. So the questions we've discussed connects two imperatives: the immediate need to feed the population, and as Mrs. Gastineau said, is going to reach more than 10 billion people according to the United Nations by 2050. And as she very clearly said, the population is going to transform and be very different from one country to another. And the other imperative that, as Philippe just mentioned, is to preserve the planet, biodiversity, soils, water resources, preserve the planet from climate change, and preserve everything within planetary boundaries. So feeding the world while preserving the planet is a very systemic challenge, and it forces us to think together: sciences, territories, society, civil society. There is not one single solution, not one go-to solution. So thank you for bringing very different ways at seeing things, very different solutions, scientific or not, that help us to move forward in this transition of food systems and also of the ways we act. The transformation of food systems really depends on territories, of cultures, practices, and also traditional knowledge that made them, especially the ones of indigenous people. And this transformation also depends on interactions between agriculture, agroecology, environment, health, and society. And we can say that the transformation of food systems questions our relationship to the living world, to our economic models, to our creativity and our values, but also to our imagination. And this hasn't been mentioned a lot. This imagination is a very broad subject, and we couldn't say everything about it. And I take this opportunity to say a few words that I think are important. Are water, the food that comes from the water, from oceans and the rivers, because I wanted to connect with the eunuch that was held in Nice, because these products feed the world, and they're food of very rich products that are full of good fat acids and omega-3 and 6. And feeding the world would require an increase by 20% of fishing resources, so which requires intensifying sustainably aquaculture in a much more efficient and with an optimization of value chains to reduce food waste. So we'll also have to keep in mind that food systems are at a crossroads of all these very complex challenges. So climate, biodiversity, access to water, degradation of soils. And one of the very interesting questions we've recently heard at Climate COP is the launch of the RISE initiative, the Resilient Initiative on Sustainable Agriculture, which is an international initiative that's going to map resources and pool resources to restore soils and farming lands. And in this context full of challenges, what is our role? What is the role of science? And because in this world, some voices are challenging science, are challenging our methods, our outcomes, and simply they're challenging rationality. And in this world, it is very important to remind people that our economy is based on the results of scientific research. We had examples from our colleagues in Cirad who reminded us of how important digital applications were to better feed the world and better protect the planet, and also the interventions on agroecology. So it's important to know that we need to invest in agroecology, to invest in transformation, and also to have consistent public policies, and that the science really plays a role to build public policies. So in this framework, informing the general public, and we can call them consumers, is also very important. I really liked the presentations on changing the habits of consumers. And sustainability sciences bring us a framework for our research to validate our knowledge, and also it gives us references for the next research. So many studies were conducted and many questions were raised by this webinar on food systems by 2050. They were reminded us that these food systems are a priority to the United Nations, besides access to energy, besides digital transformation, including artificial intelligence. It's very important to understand the impact of artificial intelligence on education, and last but not least, social protection. The different reports of GSDR underlined the necessity for us to pool our investments and our resources in transforming food systems, because transforming food systems is one of the five main leverages to achieve our sustainable development goals. So food systems are a catalyst to accelerate the implementation of Agenda 2030, because Agenda 2030 is tomorrow, and we have to think ahead. We have to think 2050. So all this is really questioning, what are we going to eat in 2050? Will we only eat products grown into the soil or into the sea? Can consumers change their own behaviors, and can we act to push the change of behaviors with the example of vegetarian diets, for example? There's also many things that we can change in food processing, in factories, and also in the creation of products that would be that would less impact the environment. Some very innovative technologies can help us produce proteins without producing any nitrogen and CO2. So this could be very innovative, but this raises other questions that are connected to the values we want to apply to science. So the values I'm mentioning are equity, ethics, and so this is why it's very important to connect all the different disciplines and sciences, especially sociology, and because sociology has a lot to do with behaviors. It's always interesting to repeat things, even if it was already told in a introduction. So feeding the world while respecting the boundaries is both a technical and a moral challenge. Ethics and morals are also pillars to food sovereignty for populations. We also mentioned it in our report on fair food. It's a way to cross disciplines, to co-construct to associate researchers, policymakers in building sustainable solutions. Mr. de Klerk said it. We can increase efficiency of the interface between science, politics, and society. And I am deeply convinced that sustainability scientists can help the world. As a conclusion, I would really like to congratulate you for the quality of all your presentations and generally speaking of your work at Cirad, IRD, and INRAE. I would like to greet our colleagues from Cameroon, Senegal, and for being with us. Thank you for all your very interesting presentations, and I would like to thank the permanent representative of France to the United Nations for their long time support. I would like to greet the United Nations and the FAO for their 80th anniversary. Your support is key to Science Festival. It's a real cooperation. It shows that multilateralism is very important to be up to the challenges that we have. Next meeting on our agenda that will be very important will be the One Health Summit that will be hosted in Lyon, France on the 7th of April 2026, and it will be dedicated to nutrition and sustainable food systems, and this will be organized just before the International Committee by FAO in September. Thank you very much, Raoul. This nexus between food, climate, biodiversity will keep our guiding thread, being our guiding thread, even if the context is very difficult for scientists to be heard and taken into consideration. We have reasons to complain, but we are still here. We are flying our flags of science, and collectively we're here together to reaffirm our role as citizens, as scientists, to put our knowledge in the contribution of a sustainable future. So thank you all for participating to this festival. Thank you to all of you who were following live with us, and to all of you who are going to see it in a video. Thank you very much, Mrs. Verdier. It's not just over yet. We're reaching the end of the 5th edition of our Science Festival, and then we will start another cycle of 5 years. So there may be another edition that will be fed by the United Nations Programme for Sustainable Development. But before I move on to thanks, I would like to make a short break and listen to Girma Beyene, who is going to share her music.
Voilà, c'est fini. Il nous reste à exprimer tous les remerciements
Yeah,
collectifs.
so this is over, but let me thank you all the organizing committee, and I will give this flower bouquet to Céline Jurgensen, our ambassador in Geneva. And this was a virtual meeting, but international meeting. Let me give you an appointment in 1 year's time. And thank you to Leonid Chizik for the musical interlude of jazz and samba. Thank you, everyone.